Looks like it's good. Oh, good, good, good. All right, guys. Welcome to the stream. I am going to do. Oh, if you're watching this live, welcome. If you're watching this afterwards, it means you're in the Patreon. The main link there. I've set these all up as live streams, like for you on a playlist. I like recording the mids watches, and I realized a lot of the time when I'm recording these things, when I just live stream them, fuck it. So I've got 5 of them. One is about a guy talking about ultimatums with his wife. He finally got his act together and he tries to sort her out and she doesn't like it. It'll be good because it'll go over leadership when she doesn't want you to lead, or how things get worse before they get better. I'm not sure which angle I'm going to play it on. I have some talking points here, but next one, my beginnings and help with kids' fitness tests. This one's kind of a mess because it's like a brand new guy who's completely frustrated, but it's good because a lot of guys assume Stoicism is about being a good punching bag without flinching, so we're going to get into that. And also, I believe it hits on the type 2 captain, the one with the constantly complaining passenger. Basically, guys with like anxious avoidant wives. Third one was this one. Oh, what was this one? Oh yeah, revenge fantasies. And this idiot here, like, managed to get blown, woke up with a blowjob and alarm clock, and then like proceeds to turn this into some like emotional distress. It's like the weirdest neuroticism thing, and I almost want to. There's a whole bunch of angles I can take it. We're just gonna play it by ear. Next one, a guy talking about a nuclear event with his wife, things moving too fast. Basically, was a real tough guy with his revenge fantasy and being overreactive, and then realizing that he needs to be non-reactive and all the kind of little stuff like that. It's just funny to hear guys talk about how tough they are, but then something actually happens and then they start to panic. So it's another reason why you got to learn not to take so many of these online alpha males puffing their chest seriously. And then the last one, which one is this one? It's a follow-up to the Oak versus the Rock thing. Oh yeah, about breaking your wife down and having a plan afterwards, because a lot of guys, again, they all kind of tap into revenge to some extent, so it's kind of neat. But it'll be kind of fun. Anyways, where's my chat? Oh, there we are. We got Johnny with the coach, got 55 Heige, got Daniel, got Vince, old student, Calabrate. That's good. Like to hear my take on Stoicism. Well, I can tell you right now, Stoicism, I think. So there's 2 types of Stoicism. There's the Stoicism that you get out of the books, and there's the Stoicism that you see guys rambling about in the modern day. And the modern day Stoicism is just guys who know they need to stop being so emotional, but they just suck at it. It's almost like uncalibrated emergent autism. Like, you're not autistic, but you're trying to play one on TV, and I don't like it. Anyways. So let's get started. Let's get my speech. Let's get the talking points. And let's get going. So it turns out there's more to leadership than barking like a dog, and there's more to red pill than resentment. Welcome, Red Pill, MidsWatch, Ryan. It's got a neat one here. You're going to like it. It's another, again, it's got all the hallmarks of like the classic post that you want to learn from the Married Red Pill with. The guy came in with his spiel, deleted his account, wandered off. No idea about the follow-up on this stuff, but he kind of, I like to think it's because guys understood what they were doing. They got their advice and then they just left. But I just know most of the time when you hear advice that requires you to look inside, become more self-aware, you tend to run away from it, because the typical standard thing is that narcissism hates people to attack the core identity. And that's a lot of what these things boil down to that. This is why, if you've ever wondered why some guys can get a lot of red pilled and relationship advice and apply it to their marriages, most guys can't, because they don't want to win. They don't want to be happy. They don't want to be successful. They want to protect the identity. And in this case, their identity is the downtrodden husband with the harpy wife. She's evil and nothing else went right, but it's not your fault. So this one is, he calls it, should I stay or should I go? And he goes off with, I don't like being married. I'd be a lot happier if I were single. However, I'd like to save my marriage if I can, mainly because I want to sleep under the same roof as my kids every night. It's important for me to do what's best for them, even if that's not the super best mega happiest choice for me. A small aside for this one, I cannot stand this human shield where guys throw their children in front of you to hide their own like emotional fragility. It's like nothing irritates me more than this, because that kid's going to be coming and finding this place in 18 years because his life is messed. But we'll put that aside for now. His marriage is what he'd call cordial. 10 years married, 2 kids. Wife and him are pleasant, don't have sex as often as he'd like or as wild as he'd likes, but it's not a dead bedroom either. A lot of built up anger, a lot of resentment on both sides. The main cause has been career and money. He's got credentials and ability to make good money in one career, but spent many years doing something he actually enjoyed, which didn't pay as well and wasn't very stable. So his wife had to work, and while he doesn't think she feels entitled not to work, she has certainly complained relentlessly about every job she's ever had. I've recently taken a job that pays well in a field I don't like, but it was my decision, and I do think it was the right one. That decision allows his wife to work part-time going forward, and she seems pleased, I guess. We've come close to divorce before. 6 years ago, she and the kids went back to the hometown for a visit, and she told me she's not coming back. She said it was not an ultimatum, but that she couldn't keep living in these dire financial straits, and that he could stay and continue his career if he wanted. Ultimatum or not, she unilaterally moved the kids away from him. That was unacceptable. He resigned from his job, moved back to the hometown, took a good paying job that he hated, and he was seething with rage most of the time. And then a few months after that, he got involved in something. I'm assuming it means he cheated, but yeah, exchanging sexually explicit emails back and forth with another chick. We never met, no plans to do so, but it was cheating on some level. My wife discovered the emails were at the brink of divorce. Oh, geez. He's doing this over pen pals. The emotional affair. Oh, for crying out loud. At least get something if you're going to have these fights. Anyways, whatever. Counseling, as you can imagine, didn't help. We all had the same fights, her bringing up this same affair, or whenever there was a disagreement, after 100 apologies, endless arguments, finally told her either divorce me or quit bringing it up, and she did. And there's been a sort of easy détente ever since. I guess I'm one of those alphas, sorta. Never been afraid to go my own way, but I've also never been able to square my internal mindset, confident, capable, independent, with being in a marriage of compromise, sacrifice, and getting along. So now I need some red pill guidance. Uncle died. Funeral's about 3 hours where we live. We're going to drive up there, spend the night, attend the funeral, drive back. We started packing, and my wife did her customary deal of ridiculous overpacking for herself and the kids. I've let her do this every trip we've taken, but now I decided this is stupid, and I'm tired of carrying all the extra luggage, so scale it down, one small bag for each person, babe. Prompted a fight, but I stayed calm and held firm. So she told me that I could pack the kids, since you seem to think that you're so much better than everyone else, and then I laughed and said, yeah, you're starting to catch on, then packed it myself and the kids, and we had everything together pretty quickly. We packed the car, started down the road. My wife kept making little snide comments about me under her breath, but not really. When I said I'd drive, she said, that's right, gotta be in control. So a few miles down the road, stopped for food. One of the kids mentions he forgot his toothbrush. Wife said something like, oh, I thought everything else was packed by the expert. Didn't raise my voice, didn't touch her. She said something like, who do you think you are to talk to me this way? You think you're my father? And then went off to the bathroom. So when she got back, she said, if you leave town without me, you will come home to find the locks changed. I just laughed and went about the business of getting food for everybody. Got back in the car. I made a U-turn, headed back home. Her jaw dropped and she stared at me. Where are you going? I said home. I'm serious about what I said, she said. I'm like, so am I. And then by the time we got home, she had announced that she's not getting out of the car and that she's going to be left behind. I got out to go inside, grabbed the toothbrush, came back to the car, told her she needed a promise that the fight was over and the comments would stop or we're not going to go anywhere. So she agreed, we went off, we basically were pleasant during the rest of the trip. However, since we're back, she's been cold and distant. I've ignored her for the most part, but this morning I told her that the threat to change the locks was unacceptable and I don't respond well to ultimatums. So she said that she's never had anyone talk to her so disrespectfully and condescendingly, and that every year or so I feel the need to assert my authority over her, and that she's not going to be bullied anymore. This is similar, that she always accuses me of manipulating and bullying her into things when I don't actually think I do. So I stayed calm And when she finished ranting, I just said, all right, and left. Since then, she sent me a couple of emails she's drafted over the weekend, repeating the same stuff and telling me how blindsided she was by my jerk face behavior. I'm just interested to get some thoughts on this situation and the best way to proceed. I think we'd both be happier if we split up. Well, I mean, I would. Maybe she wouldn't. But I'm not sure that would be the best thing for the kids. So I need your help to take control. Couple of thoughts before we get into what we had mentioned at the time. There is so much to unpack from this. But the one thing I will say for sure is this is what happens when you give a guy the red pill who has no frame and no intention of getting it. There are so many good things happening here that he completely fumbles on. Like, for example, calling yourself an alpha is the most ridiculous thing. An emotional affair is ridiculous as well. Dude, if you feel the need to stray and you're just sending erotic emails with a paper trail on it to some other girl, then that's like the thirstiest thing I've ever seen. Like, if you're going to cheat like a man. Don't be like ASL, like it's 1997's AIM Instant Messenger. That was just ridiculous. Obviously, he knows the marriage counselor thing wasn't good, but he's like, huge resentment comes from so many things. Like, first off, I get it. He's doing, and I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm writing books and I'm streaming on YouTube, and my girl's doing her job, and I left my corporate stuff to come here. So like, I get the sentiment, but the difference here is I made sure to make decisions for our life that financially that made sense, where this guy just didn't. And then they started getting into financial issues. And so he had to make the sacrifice for the family to take the job that he hated, mostly because she offered an ultimatum, but then couldn't take acceptability for it being an ultimatum. And then he gets resentful for her over it, and she gets resentful for him over this. And it's just like every chance he has where he does something and she defers to his leadership, he basically makes her regret it. And then he's constantly bringing it up, and she's constantly bringing her up, and he takes her so seriously. And then he lets her give all these little disrespectful things, but he takes it like the whole thing is just a mess. But enough of me rambling about this. I know it's a very simple, like it sounds like a simple statement. Have frame, and these problems all go away. Have a cognizant idea of what you want to do with your life and lead the family and make decisions and then own them. If you decide to move back home and do the job, well, that's your decision. Zero resentment for it. If you're going to resent it, don't do it. Finally, and I cannot stress this enough for anybody who is a father now or is gonna be a father, don't ever, in the history of ever, say that I hate my life, I hate my wife, I hate the things, but I'm staying together for the kids. Because right there, I'm like, you don't even love your children because you're using them as a meat shield. You're using your children to defend you against criticism. You're using them to describe your inability to make any steps towards your own happiness, any ability to handle your situation. And then you're trying to say like it's for their benefit. Like, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry, but it's a good thing to say because I'm Canadian. There is no way that your kids are raised in that house with a guy who's that cowardly to accept his own emotions, wants, and self-improvement. There's no way a kid is raised for 18 years outside of that and doesn't have deep-seated issues growing it up. Like, you're literally ruining your children's lives. There was a great quote by the last psychiatrist. He says, you can either be a good father or you can raise good kids. And if you don't know the difference, it's okay. They will. The idea being good father as the identity. You know, I tuck them in every night. It's always those symbols. It's never about actually being a good father. It's about what do good fathers do? Well, they tuck their kids at night. They read books. They make sure the kids, you know, don't go on YouTube too much. Like all these little symbolic things. And then when it comes to actually having the kid raised well to be a functional adult, that goes by the wayside because it's all about saving the identity, not by actually raising good kids. But that's my rant on it. Next part here, Jack 10 of Hearts. So he caught on to the ultimatum line and the dire financial straits. He's like, so let me get this straight. Were you in dire financial straits? And who took on the burden of those finances? Who paid the bills? Who tried to budget? Who opened the mail from all the credit cards? If it was your wife, then this was a gross failure lead on your part. You can take a low-paying job as long as you're disciplined enough to make sure the money you do make provides for your family. If you're just bringing home meager paychecks and letting your wife deal with all the fallout, then that's just a bad combination. And then he goes to the part where the guy was talking about the wife's little snide comments. Oh, I bet you think you're better than everybody and all this stuff. It's like, look, you got an insubordinate first officer. She's insubordinate because she's been reporting to a drunk captain for years. Now the captain's all marching up and down the bridge telling everybody they're doing it wrong. So yeah, you're going to get shit tested like this until you consistently demonstrate stronger leadership. An aside on this, yes, and this is one thing I make sure to let everybody know when they're working on their relationships, is that if you've been in this state of quiet misery for any length of time, things will get worse before they get better. It's not because things aren't working. It's because people are stubborn. I always tell the story. My dog, it's the best analogy that you'll understand this with. My dog is just big enough, 17 pounds, Hitchens, Italian Grand. He can jump up onto the counter and swipe anything that's about 3 inches from the edge. So one time we left a loaf of bread over there. He swiped it down, ate a loaf of bread. Horribly sick from it. Crazy. But he has never stopped. Every time we go out for a walk, he comes home, he runs straight to the kitchen, takes the jump up, looks for the loaf of bread. We have to make sure that everything is good every time. Not most of the time, not sometimes, not from now on, forever. And 99 times out of 100, we have never left anything that close to the counter, but there's always that one time. Maybe we were partying and hungover. Maybe we were in a rush after work. Maybe we had to go deal with emergency and we left something there. He always manages to steal something. And as long as that's the case, he's always going to check that counter. And so it's the same. The way I am a bad dog owner on leaving stuff close to the counter, so many husbands are bad husbands in that they try to lead, but they're not consistent. And then they always get more and more shit tests until they sort it out. So Jack's suggesting next is like, okay, try something less confrontational. You could have said, you know what, pack the necessities in a small bag, pack the useful but maybe not needed in another bag, and then we're just going to decide at the time whether to bring both bags or not. It's not a compromise, but it's more of a structure to his critique as opposed to like, fix this crap and then, swatting something out of the way. Or just pack yourself a small bag. We'll probably leave some stuff behind. I've budgeted some money on the trip to account for this. Which I'm surprised he never thought of that. Like for something like a toothbrush, just stop at a CVS, pick up a toothbrush. It's like $2, you'll be fine. But instead he has to drive all the way home and create this giant melodrama over it, right? So these are the type of orders you need to give until your wife realizes there's a strong and capable captain at the helm. They're still orders, but they also provide guidance. When you get a "you're doing it wrong" shit test, the correct response is rarely to say no and go do it for them. Because now it's no longer about getting the job done. It's about who's going to screw up the job so the other person can gloat. Like, does that sound like effective leadership to you? And Jack never did take time in the military, but this is exactly what you're taught. I remember this in my leadership course. It's like, if you direct somebody and they don't do it right, chances are you never gave them the tools. And this is leadership 101. You provide the guidance, you give somebody the tools to act according to their abilities and training to achieve what you need them to achieve. And in this case, absolutely did not do that. You know what? She's a wife and she's an adult. She said, look, we're either going to take women super seriously and have fights over toothbrushes, or we're going to treat them not as seriously and then just plan for it. You got to pick a lane. And I'm telling you, this lane, not as happy as the one you could have. Not the lane with frame. Okay, so we jump to the part where Jack's talking about the line where, you think you're my dad? You can't talk to me that way. I suspect she has a good relationship with her father. And he's like an old school, what you would call a red-pilled man. And if I'm right, this means that she's taking your tone as condescending because they are threats from someone that thinks they're an authority figure, despite not previously playing competence at such. This one here, you've seen my post on power games. And I always suggest when you take an engagement with somebody, put it on a 2-axis chart, just mentally. You don't have to draw it out because you're not an autist, where it's status and harmony. Who considers who more important status-wise, and is it a for each other or against each other argument? And in this case, condescending is always seen as somebody who's on your team, but considers themselves above you. So you act condescending to the other person, and they should generally act submissive backwards. That's a good place to be. The problem is, she doesn't believe that she's in that submissive quadrant. She thinks he's being condescending, but he doesn't deserve it. So what does she do? She goes over to the other side of things, where she's acting against his team and higher status. And now you have two A-type personalities butting heads. Now, this is not a sustainable engagement. Now, the general idea is you should just disengage from it. But the approach to this isn't then just to continue to butt heads like this. You got to find some way around that engagement to get the other person submissive, in a submissive state where they're on your same team and they defer to your status. And in this case, literally putting in the work is the only way to get there. 100% consistency, 100% leadership, trust, but not talking. Talking will never get there. So he continues on like, well, it seems like you escalate situations without really having the leadership credibility to do so. Imagine you and your wife are playing Monopoly. She's the banker and everything's starting, giving everybody their money, but she's being slow about it. And so you say, it's not necessary to count on everything so slowly. And she says, okay, you do it. So now you're the banker. You count on everybody's money. You start the game. Somebody realizes they don't have enough $5 bills. Your wife sneers and says, must have been a mistake by the banker. You say if she doesn't stop talking this way, you're going to flip over the board and walk out so she can play by herself. Do you see how stupid it sounds now? So who's right? Literally nobody. That's the point of this. Your wife has a lot of bottled up resentment for your career decisions. You have a lot of bottled up resentment over her acting like a bitch. And then you get arguments like these. I think your marriage can be salvaged, but you need a way less confrontational approach. Your wife thinks she's been married to a man-child, and until you establish that you're not a man-child, she will continue to feel this way. In the meantime, when you get a shit test, don't think about how to win, think about how to lead. You don't convince her of anything, but you can just state your orders in a way that acknowledges her feelings and offers contingencies if you're wrong. Nuking these things isn't bullying unless you only handle them by bullying, or by nuking, sorry. It gets annoying really quickly. You're just the guy who keeps flipping over the Monopoly board, and this behavior will not work as the negative reinforcement for her to be less bitchy. It'll just piss her off, and you'll have to resort to these measures to get the upper hand in disagreements. So be a leader, be her leader, and that's how you take control. Final thoughts on this. I think a lot of guys, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme for the next couple episodes, where they've been in lives of quiet desperation for so long that once they're given the promise, not even the guarantee, the promise of being that top tier guy and the girl's going to defer to you and the sex life's going to be fun, and they instantly think like that'll teach that bitch a lesson. Oh, I'm going to teach her good. And then they turn this thing into a battleground, which is weird. Like, it's a wife. You don't really need, she's not your arch nemesis. She's like a 120-pound girl. Like, what are you going to do? Body slam her? It's like, you'll win. If you guys get physical, you'll win. If she wants to divorce rape you, she'll win. But it's like, why are you fighting? You're supposed to be on the same team. And if you're not on the same team, why the hell are you there? Why are you even trying this stuff? Why are you not just divorcing? Well, I want to tuck my kids in. Well, yeah, but your kids want a good father. We don't get what we want. Just keep this in mind. A lot of the times... Actually, you know what? I'll just end this on a saying because I could ramble about this forever. Do you want to win or do you want to be happy? Enjoy yourselves. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. All right. That's one in the can. 1 second, guys. I will be there in 1 minute. What is this one? 64? Yes, 64. Dude, ever since I started numbering these things properly based on their links, it's made the editing process so much easier. Had I not lost the damn initial recordings, this would have been super smooth. Yeah, I'm not sorry, just Canadian. Well done, sir. Hey, we got Torsh here too. Look at this. The whole gang has showed up. All right, Weirdo. Thank you, mods, for the Weirdo. Neo Machio, Caretaker. Moose. Oh, is that the moose? Oh, that's adorable. All right, here, we're just going to deal with this one right quick. Oh, you guys already did. Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, Moose, like, as much as, like, I like having an audience member and I like guys engaging in the chat, but we're kind of like a retard-free zone, so you're probably going to want to find somewhere else. May I suggest, I heard about this guy named Wheat Waffles and another one called Butt Fudger. Try those guys out. They might be more your cup of tea. Jake Jeffries, are you and Rich still cool? Well, I hope so. as far as I can tell. Look, I really don't. I know it sounds weird because you guys watch those Twitter beefs. I don't really have problems with people. Anytime you see me running my mouth on Twitter, that's performative top of the funnel activities. Like, I really don't have beef. I'm not angry at Abu American. I don't actually have a strong opinion about Tate other than like the branding is weird. Yeah. So just relax. I'll put it this way. There's a bunch of guys who are in this channel and kind of new. You can go two routes. You can do the moose thing and act like a spurg, but we're getting work done. Like, I'm really here to show you guys relationship red pilled strategies. There really is a lot of like functional stuff that's out there. So yeah. Why no content with Rich? I don't know. Why is there no content with Jake Jeffries? Who knows? Look, man, we all got jobs to do. We all get our stuff done. Is that what you want? Like, if you want me to collab with Rich and there's enough interest in it, maybe. But to be fair, I don't know what I offer. Most of his stuff involves like millionaires talking about making their millions, and I don't really have a story about that for you guys. They're not going to irritate me. If anything, I'm kind of going genuine with this thing. Like, maybe they're real people and maybe they're trolls. I don't know. All right, so next one. Word, gone for a while. I'm glad to see you're still here with the MidsWatch. Oh yeah, to be honest, there's a set content here. There is, like, that was the 64th. I started at 108, and it's going to work up to about 1. So there's like 100 links altogether. So 100 episodes, and we're almost there. We're almost at the end. Where'd I leave off here? I just did, should I stay or should I go? Oh yeah, the kid-related shit test. God. All right, the guy's a bit verbose on this one. But I like it because, so in the book Dread, which is going to be after Frame, that's coming out hopefully before Christmas, there's a line in there where I talk about through your work comes authority. And this is kind of where it originally came from, but I think you'll like it. It's about another guy dealing with shit tests on his kids. It's a bit jargon heavy, so I'm gonna be like translating it as I read it. So if you see me do a little bit of a stutter, that's probably why, because I don't want to hear, alpha male the oak, and it's just gonna be cringe. Anyways. There is nothing stoic about tanky punches like a punching bag without flinching. Welcome, boys. MidsWatch. Got a new one here. Guy is asking about needing help with fitness tests related to his kids. And it's just such a weird but common post where a lot of guys like think that they need to be super stoic by letting somebody just berate them and walk all over them. And I think that like the idea of Frame, and they think that means to be non-reactive, which it absolutely isn't. But, and again, it's mostly because these are the typical married red pill guys from years back. They make their one big post with a very specific problem. They get kind of embarrassed. They delete their stuff and run off, and you never see and hear from them again. Now, is it because it doesn't work? Which, no, usually the times when things didn't work, they come back and they basically give everybody a blast of shit, and we refine the process. And this is the point now where everybody kind of knows what they're doing. Usually what it is people's identity get hurt, and they don't like the idea of having a successful and happy relationship. What they like is they like that they're the victim, their wives are the bad guys, and it's not their fault. And they really are just coming and looking for a reinforcement of that identity, which is the weirdest martyr narcissism around. But you're better than that. And you're going to use this stuff to do better off in your relationships. So this guy took the journey into the red pill about a month ago. He's been married for 15 years, being the nice plow horse to his wife, hoping that the next thing he did for her would make her happy and everything would be great. He took on way more responsibilities than he should has. She's done a good job at shirking them and throwing them in his face while he's cleaning or doing dishes or whatever, about how she does so much more than him and how he forgets to do stuff, yada, yada, yada. Started with a cat that I got her. It's basically my cat now. The dogs are 100% mine also. Sex is like once every 3 months. Then we have a kid. Of course, it's when she wanted it. It was sex every day. Then she got pregnant, and then she stopped. And lucky for him, he's fertile and happened in the first month. Both kids, yippee. But then since he fell back to sleep very easily, it became his duty to deal with him in the middle of the night, have a second kid. He's still dealing with that now. He had a bit of an awakening, a numbing of my marriage and being treated like the crap that I was. I was fat, out of shape, I was miserable. So he cut out eating like a sob. He stopped drinking soda, started working out. He was numb to his wife's constant shit tests, and they weren't shit tests as an aside. They were just her disrespect and neuroticism that came out as anger. But he doesn't know that yet. So he was like a Days and Peter in the office when he was hypnotized. He's taken the red pill, but not knowing that he had nobody helping him to show him the way. He went numb to the world for about 2 weeks, had a trip out of town, and he'd been dreading. And going anywhere with this wife is a shit show because apparently he never does a thing to pack. He doesn't get the kids ready to be out the door. It's always something with her. She's on high shit test alert when they're about to leave. He just ignores it and goes around prepping all this stuff that she's not going to appreciate anyway. Now, this is an informal wedding that I've taken an interest in photography, so he wants to take some pictures for them. Going in, his wife knew this and agreed she would take the kids. Got back to the hotel early, and he'd stay and finish taking pictures. But an old female friend of his grabbed him before she left and insisted that he stayed. She knew he was miserable, and she knew that my wife would get me to leave, and she wanted me to stay, get drunk, and have fun. So my wife left, and my friend started feeding me beer and moonshine. He says, yeah, that's the kind of wedding we were at. Fair. Anyways, had fun. If my eyes weren't open before, they were open now. He got to take some pictures, more pictures, some cool night shots, kept drinking, checks his phone. 3 missed calls from the wife. Now, this isn't uncommon. She's like a fun-seeking missile. A friend was here with me when I make the call. Where are you? Are you still taking pictures? That's ridiculous. The kids have been crying. I reminded her that she went to a 3-day concert 2 weeks prior that left him with 2 sick kids. Well, that was different. You were home. So he said, look, I'm having fun, and then he hung up on her. His friend asked if he wanted to take her home, and he said, nope, fuck it, give me another beer. He continued to get shit-faced, and the girl gave him a ride home sometime after midnight. So for 20 minutes in front of the kids, a huge fight about how I needed to put the family first, and that the family wouldn't return the favor for taking pictures, and how she had to tend to the kids, who were fine, by the way. So he kind of knows he should have shut this down, but that was before he became red-pilled, but it basically sets the stage that this guy is been beaten his entire marriage, 15 years? So he's working through the prerequisites. He started No More Mr. Nice Guy. He's making some changes. He's necessary. He is finding, though, that his daughter now is misbehaving, and the wife's just sitting on her phone. Then the daughter decides she has to go to the bathroom again. He's like, go tell mom it's her turn. Wife looks up for the phone, says, you need to do it. And they have a little fight over this. Bold-faced defiance. And he doesn't know what to do. That she's basically refusing to be a mom. So, a couple thoughts before we get into the rest of this thing. I know it sounds like a disjointed mess, and if you've listened this far in to the episode, congratulations. It's hard enough to read. There's no real point to it. It's a meandering mess. The theme is, though, the guy, whether he was raised that way or brainwashed or gaslit or whatever, into always deferring to his wife. His wife has a lot of anxiety. His wife is rather incompetent. She's rather lazy. And so the only tool she knew was to get angry at him. And he's so worried and so afraid of getting any woman in his life angry that he would constantly defer to her. He did that to the detriment of his health, the detriment of the health of his kids, the detriment of his own happiness, and ultimately the detriment of their marriage. Now, for these guys, they used to call it a type 2 captain. It's a series of posts we have about the 3 different types of dysfunctional captains in marriages. And the type 2 was the one with the constantly complaining passenger. Nothing you ever do is right. And she knows if she complains loud enough, you'll do everything and she gets to do nothing. So really the only way out of that is you kind of have to learn to stop. You have to cut the umbilical cord. And most of the frame that he has to develop is learning that he does not need her approval. He doesn't need her respect. He doesn't need to put up with her crap, but he doesn't need to make it an adversarial situation. It's not his arch nemesis. It's not a scoreboard where they're trying to put up more points than the other person. It's just a nagging, shrew wife who's lazy. And then how you want to act, there's a ton of different ways to act around that, but just understanding that you're your own judge is the key part to getting there. And there's a lot of work. And he's already starting with no more Mr. Nice Guy, which is going to be a huge boon for him to get rid of his nice guy behaviors. When I say no, I feel guilty, he's going to learn a basic adult-like assertiveness, which is going to be great. And then eventually he's going to get into like Rational Male, Practical Female Psychology, other books that I have on the sidebar series in here that will show you like why things are happening the way they are, the dynamics at play, and strategies you can use to thrive inside of them. So back to this. Jack looks through and he's like, well, the guy asked, like, what's a better way to deal with this? And he goes, hey, welcome to the red pill, dude. I would suggest you take a step back and try to get a broader perspective. The pattern is clear. Any remote inconvenience your wife feels, you're her punching bag. She either dumps the responsibility on you, or if she has to do it herself, she dumps the blame on you for being in a situation where she has to do it herself. And he's like, yeah, if you had to pack a bag for your kids, she'd screech that you forgot 10 things. So she has to pack it herself, and then screech at you about other things. If she asks you to move a car seat, you say you haven't. She screeches, well, why haven't you done that yet? You lamely leave the room and move the car seat. So she hamsters herself that you're useless and cannot do anything right, and that she has to do everything around here, which is how she justifies why she's allowed to go on a 3-day concert with her friends, but you still can't spend a couple hours having a few drinks with yours. So I generally divide new married red-pilled guys into 2 camps. There are those whose marriages are operating with no frame. The wife may be exasperated, angry, desperate, but she was never particularly strong-willed enough to impose a frame of her own. Those women are just desperate for leadership. This is also type 1 captains, by the way. Generally, the husbands that swallow the pill, they're here within a month basically saying something like, I cut out video games, crap TV, started going to the gym, getting things done around the house, and now my wife is happier and we're having sex constantly. Hooray for them, but that's not your situation. You are in the other camp. There are those whose marriages are operating in their wife's frame. Guys like you, guys who have to deal with this shit. So he mentions a part of the story that I kind of glossed over where tonight we're in the doctor's room waiting with my son. She's filling out paperwork. And like, why is she filling out paperwork? Why aren't you filling it out? Because your wife frame is that she handles things like this. She gets to fill out the paperwork or manage finances or plan vacations, and you get all the garbage dumpster duties that she deems you barely competent enough to do. This is not a winning dynamic. But the solution isn't just to wrest the forms from her and start filling them out yourself. Well, I mean, you should. But here's what'll happen in your example. The form will have a box that says something like the child's blood type, and you won't know what that is. So you're going to ask her, and then she, who's already pissed off that she's the only one on potty time duty, will immediately shit test you about how incompetent you are and that you don't even know your own son's blood type. So in terms of household management, you've succumbed to her frame, and it's a pretty bad one. It's okay. You can get out of it. Now, you can go bull in a china shop like you did at the wedding, declaring, I'm mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. Throw your shit in the ground, and when it comes to your wife challenging your boundaries, you should continue to do that. These will be the building blocks of your frame. In your frame, it's completely reasonable to spend a few hours with some longtime friends at a wedding, so damn it, you're going to spend a few hours with your longtime friends at a wedding. But I would recommend separating that approach from what I would call household management authority shit test, because leading and running a household comes down to competence. And in your wife's frame, you're pretty fucking incompetent. So you have to establish your own frame and your own competence. Otherwise, you're destined for a rocky couple months with your wife before the divorce. Your wife will hamster. You're not just a useless husband, but an inconsiderate one, and that'll provide her a lot of food for her hamster. You need to extract yourself from your wife's frame, and you're already in the process of doing that. Then you need to dismantle hers, construct your own, and pull her in there. When it comes to household leadership and management, pure defiance just distracts yourself from her frame. It doesn't do anything else. You'll be back there in 3 months with a story like, I was doing the chores and the kids were being annoying, blah, 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 and the same thing you just heard here. Sure, sometimes it works, but it probably won't because your frame's not strong enough to withstand the 800-pound hamster that's going to be constantly trying to huff and puff and blow it all down. So I'm sure it's so tempting to modify all your behavior overnight and no longer take her shit because of how much resentment you're feeling right now. Now, don't ignore that resentment. Let yourself feel it, but don't dwell on it. Think about your marriage on a macro level. Imagine your ideal marriage and what your wife would be. Then when you imagine those scenarios, it's probably not you saying, go fuck yourself, bitch. As tempted as you are right now to say that, it's you just acting your wife acting affectionate, respectful, and appreciative. That's the goal. So that's your frame, eye on the prize. Now, if you can reach that goal, you're being methodical and strategic about it. That's a good thing. You've already been advised, read the 12 levels of dread. Notice the first 3 levels have nothing to do with your wife. It's about self-improvement, so improve. That should be your focus, not winning these micro authority battles with your wife when it comes to your kids. If your daughter's being a brat, deal with her. Those are not the shit tests that are going to make and break your frame. Next part. So yeah, it's a bit of a slog. You can see this one. But this guy's got a lot to break down. It's really one of those situations where he has to learn to be an adult, a man, a husband, and deal with a nagging bitch of a wife all at the same time. And it really is a mouthful. And this is why most guys just give up and they give you some line about the juice not being worth the squeeze. It's like, yeah, it may not be. But if you don't see the benefit in being a well put together guy, then I don't know what to tell you. You have a sparring partner, use it. Or don't. I don't know, it's no skin off my back one way or the other. Anyways, so one of the guys, he's been around for much longer than me, Stratos Autocrator. He has a great quote that says, leadership requires work, and from this work comes authority. So you're easily going to pass shit tests if you can demonstrate that you have other shit to do besides take your daughter to go to potty every 5 minutes. That could be identify stuff in the home you've been neglecting, get a hold of your household finances, get a long-term financial plan, find areas of the house that your wife is especially annoying about. You know, go and things that you don't want to handle, pay somebody else to deal with that. Get all your family documents organized, birth certificates, passports, wills, registrations. You know, don't worry about every micro shit test, especially when it comes to your kids. Put in the work, lead the family, and you'll get to delegate who has to deal with potty time. Now, you're going to get a lot of advice about lifting, about hobbies, about socializing with friends, self-improvement, and you're also going to get a lot of advice that just says, tell your wife she's a bitch to go fuck herself. And none of them are wrong. Your wife is a bitch, and she absolutely should go fuck herself, but my advice is geared towards a macro-oriented way of doing so. Keep your eye on the prize, and you'll avoid the pitfalls I think guys here have experienced, being too confrontational, before they were remotely ready, before they had any semblance of frame, and before they ended up being on the brink of divorce. And you can do this. We're rooting for you. Obviously, he didn't do this. It's fun, man, because, like, this is 7-8 years ago. And in the book that it's going to be coming out on Christmas, 2022-ish, hopefully, on Frame, it's described, like, it took an entire book for me to go over just what he's talking about building Frame here. And as well as the Dread stuff. The entire Dread book is coming next. They were originally one book. They were way too big. The thing about Dread is it's like a 3-pronged approach. There is the approach of learning to build attractive behaviors. That's pre-selection. That's understanding the role that anxiety plays with it, having options. There is the role of learning to not be taken for granted, which is a very important one, because most of the time, even you could be the hottest guy on earth, but if you're getting taken for granted, nobody's going to respect it. And then the third role is just general self-improvement, right? And those 3 things together compromise Dread. Frame, on the other hand, is more of a tetrahedron. There's like 4 steps to that. There is your physical, which is like taking care of yourself, learning to be more attractive, learning to be less unattractive, fitness, diet, all that sort of stuff. There is the intellectual stuff, and that's understanding the various red pill strategies, like how to handle a shit test, how to handle a fitness test, how to do leadership. Same things here. Like, a lot of this looks like, and it's advice I normally give to guys too in my community, where it's like, yeah, start doing chores around the house, do them to your standard and do them on your timeline. They're like, well, isn't that the same issue of just doing chore play and your wife, like, you're not doing it. You're not doing it to make your wife want to sleep with you. You're doing it to set a standard for yourself. And that standard is the work. That quote from earlier, leadership requires work. From that work requires, that's the work. And yeah, I get it. It's just doing dishes, it's taking kids and doing this thing, and it's all this extra work. And like, isn't there a wife here? Shouldn't she be doing this stuff? And she absolutely should. But if you can't establish that you're perfectly competent with or without her to run your family as you see fit, then it's very, very difficult to start barking orders and having expectations. Because they're like, who the fuck is this guy? Tell me how to do things. He doesn't even know the kid's blood type. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a lot of work. And a lot of it's for your own sake too. Like, the way I put it is, like, pretend your wife is dead. Live your life the way you would live it. And you're going to find so many demons that you kind of ignore. Like, 1, Sometimes guys let lifestyle creep up. The house is too big to clean. They have too many purchases. The debt's too much to handle. There's too much work. And then they realize, like, if the wife wasn't here, this is too much work for me to handle and have any amount of happiness in my own life. And so they learn to scale back their own life, move into a different place, sell the second car, all those extra extravagances they don't need. On top of that, at one point, they're going to be sitting there prepping the kids' lunches, washing the dishes, looking at an electric socket that needs to be changed, and look over and they see their wife in sweatpants eating bonbons, watching, Love is Blind on Netflix, and realizing, like, she doesn't provide any value to my life. And that's where the guy clicks. He stops being subservient to her. He stops putting up with their shit. He's not angry. He's not trying to find revenge. He just realizes, like, she doesn't provide me any value. And so she gets no value from me. And at that point, some guys leave their wives and, like, if I can find a girl that's 10, 15 years younger than her, sleeps with me more, and is equally useless, then that's a step up. Or a lot of the wives get anxious, be like, geez, I think I'm getting left behind. They start stepping up their things. Everything is happy. Now, I could talk about this for hours, and when the audiobook comes out, I will be. But just realize, like, this is a very dense, complex, and deep subject. The stuff that's coming in this MidsWatch episode is almost just like a teaser trailer, which is weird because I'm already like 20 minutes in. So just be aware, like, when people talk about the red pill, they don't know what they're talking. It's stuff like this. There's like serious work involved, and it's rewarding as hell. Like, I could give success stories till the cow comes home, or the cows come home, and I have on the various times on Red Morning. So do listen in, stick around, and you'll see everything you need to know. But on that note, I'll catch you guys later. Cheers. Look at this. You almost need therapy to rewire your brain. You know what? No, you don't. I'm very anti-therapy. Like, therapists, they deal, I hate to say it, but like talk therapy and drug therapy doesn't work. All it does is it masks the symptoms. And talk therapy is really geared towards women. Long story short, it has an intrinsic value that's attached to it, and it doesn't work for guys. Guys need action-oriented stuff. The problem is, therapy doesn't address that at all. Yeah, exactly. Too many guys just reading a book or a Tate video thinking they're now fixed. Yeah. Like, I'm not even joking. That was 20 minutes of a field report. And I could literally speak for hours on all the little details of what each one of those things represent. And this was like 7 years before we had a lot of these topics solidified too. So it's even back then, guys didn't have the guidance. Like, they knew the general direction they had to get to and then how to go there. So if anything, people today are on such better footing. Because back then it was almost like flying blind. You knew you needed frame. We couldn't quite articulate it, but we knew it involved being non-reactive when appropriate, being emotionally sympathetic when appropriate. It involved you treating your decision as sacrosanct and not letting the other person usurp it with their emotional nonsense. Yeah. But now everybody not only knows this, they know all the details attached to it. The work has like a guidance to it. It has a structure to it. That's why I have like such little patience for guys now that are talking about red pill, but then they got their lives as a fucking mess. I'm like, dude, back in my day, we had to red pill uphill both ways in the snow. And nowadays you're given to the point where you just have to sit there on a chair, listen into it while you're at the gym, and you're fucking fine, dude. But hey, whatever. Yeah, Mish. I saw the new Avi Mish, where he's now decided to play a chick, and he's already getting a lot of thirst traps. I bet you anything, all your same shit posts, people will take that as tough love from like a ball busting chick. But congratulations, sir, you're officially the first red pilled trap. Let me see here. Oh, where'd it go? I lost you there for a second. Will the sidebar ever be updated to include other works, or is it set in stone? I mean, it's a living document. So chances are my book on frame will probably make the sidebar, or at least it should. Sean Smith's book about the tactical guide to marriage made the sidebar. That's something new after my time that's been added. I think there's one or two more. But yeah, essentially, you get guys who have done the work, kind of switched on, and they kind of get the approval of everybody around them. They'll make suggestions, and unless somebody's got a veto, it'll eventually get added to there. But I don't see there being too much more being added to it as far as functional core stuff. Because, I mean, yeah, the topic is deep, but it's not particularly wide, you know? Once you've got frame, you've got frame. You don't need 15 more books on the expansion of it. Let me see here. Get caught up in chat. Use enough lube. Material seems fairly daunting for newcomers. Well, for newcomers, it's easy. Just go to the sidebar. I've literally made YouTube videos that'll show you the book, and we walk through it chapter by chapter. I provide the stuff that's happened with it, the experiences those guys had. Like, read No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover and get a gym workout. 5x5 strong lifts. That's literally the starting point. Doesn't matter what your situation is, that's always the starting point. Every guy has some nice guy behaviors to deal with, and every guy could use some time in the gym. And if you don't need time at the gym, then it's still good to get in the practice. For a lot of guys, they usually had to read the book like 2 or 3 times to fully grasp all the things. So what I like is my piece that accompanies it kind of goes through all those things that guys didn't figure out until the second or the third read. And then after that, you got When I Say No, I Feel Guilty, which is assertiveness training, and the Assertive Bill of Rights. Again, 2 or 3 times the guys had to read it, so I put it there. Esther Villar attaches the How Things Aren't Fair for Men. And I love that one because when you first read it, it lets you know it's like, yeah, you're right. We do have it harder. And that's like your first read. And then like a year later, you read it again and you'll kind of understand some more about it. And then, like your third year, you'll read it one more time and you realize, dude, this angry, bitter feminist is treating men as if they're defective women. And you're like, Jesus Christ, what a cunt. Michael's story, exact same thing, where you realize all these guys were like, oh, these whores will get their comeuppance. And they're like, no, they won't. But at first you read it and you're like, yeah, way to yell at those bitches. But then the second time, a year later, you read it and you realize this kid's fucking clueless. But I mean, this stuff, none of it is daunting. You just have to make a modicum of effort. It really is. And then just lay off of YouTube. Like if you're watching anybody on YouTube about Red Pill, you've already fucked up. And I'm including myself in this. Like you don't need the MidsWatches. The sidebar books are fine. You can watch the sidebar series if you want to, but that's it. Anyways. Yeah, he meant No More Nice Guy and When I Say No, Feel Guilty, which helps a guy simply be reading. Yeah. You mean Red Pill isn't yelling at drunk girls? I mean, it could be yelling at drunk girls if you really want it to be, but I mean, if you're not making money off of that grift and selling Gumroad courses, what the fuck's the point? If I'm going to start yelling at women, I sure as hell want to make sure I make some money off of it. Anyways, where did I leave off on this one? That was... Oh, the wake up sex. Dude, am I that far already? All right, rough. All right, I got to get going. We're already I got another 2 or 3 to go here. Jesus Christ. Revenge, wake up sex, hamster overdrive. Yeah, that's the one. I got it. All right, let's do it. Well, if you're going after revenge for your wife, then make sure you just dig 2 graves. Welcome, MidsWatch, Ryan. You know the deal. I'll get right into it. So when guys are first learning to handle and fix any dead bedrooms, any lives of quiet desperation, overbearing wives, underbearing husbands, that sort of thing, a lot of guys have a hard time navigating some of the things that happen. There's actually some very strange events that happen very frequently. And this is going to be a good example because the post is called Wake Up Sex and Hamster Overdrive. Call it the alarm clock. So this is a story of a guy who went through an emotional roller coaster with his wife because of a bunch of things, wakes him up with a blowy, sends a bunch of passive aggressive emails, and he's basically clueless on how to deal with all of these things, and he really needs some help. And I know it gets into revenge. Like there was a great saying amongst the Red Pill guys where there's nothing more of a beta male thing to do than have a revenge fantasy over women. And it cuts into like Michael's story, which is on my sidebar playlist. I'll cut to the chase. So typical, the most common Red Pill poster deleted. Day 3, wake up sex and hamster on overdrive. So he goes, last night, my wife sucked my dick when I got home from work and accepted my new nutrition plan, but then tried to revisit last weekend's confrontation and extract an apology. I stayed calm, tried to apologize, or declined to apologize, and then ended the conversation, left the house, and then went back to my office. She sends 3 texts while I was gone, and I responded just once, yes, to her asking if I had my cell phone with me. When I got home, she was already asleep. That morning, woke me up at 6, found her naked next to me, rubbing my boy, and crawling on top of me. And she blew me enough to get me going. She rode me till I finished, and then finished me with her mouth and told me to go back to sleep. As I was drifting off, she said something about ignoring all the emails except for the last one. When I woke up, I found she had sent me 3 emails during the night. Looks like she was awake from 2 till 6, and then she woke me up to sleep with me. The first one, hi baby, Said she was not trying to start a fight. She wanted to know what I thought about she was working on and not working on in their relationship. The second one, no subject, said she didn't think she would continue the relationship unless our communication improved, and that she lashed out last night because she felt like a dog being forced into a corner. And third, said, read this first, said that she did not intend to disqualify anything from the 2 previous emails, but that she understood my position more and more and feels hopeful about our future. She said she understands my need to have a strong, distant, even cold demeanor in my objection to make us more consistent and responsible as a family. She hopes we can meet in the middle with her being less defensive and him being less dictatorial. So in case I wasn't clear, I was asleep during all 3 of these. The morning, she had been nothing but sweet and flirty to me. She dressed up to go to a luncheon, and I told her I might have to sleep with her again. And she says, you might have to. So at this moment, things are going well. I imagine she will think things are awful and hopeless again soon, but right now, it's good. Okay. Couple points. 1, if you've never gotten what I call the alarm clock, then you haven't red pilled properly. Every guy, and I mean every single guy who got it, who got his act together, who did properly red pilled, has gotten an alarm clock. Everyone. In fact, one guy, one of my favorite guys on here, is a good buddy of mine. He goes by the name Bogey D6. He actually had, and this is like the funniest post I've ever seen. He's like, how many blowies is too many? And he gave this complaint that his wife was just blowing him all the time. But it was like 2 blowjobs per every time they were sleeping together. And he was trying to figure out what's the problem, what he can do to fix this. And it wasn't like a humble brag or anything. He was like literally bothered. And the first comment, and I will never stop laughing, he's like, hey, Bogey, fuck you. Makes me laugh, man. It always makes me laugh. So in this case, like, he's kind of catching on. Kinda. He learns, like, don't apologize. And there's a couple reasons. Like, apologies aren't good because, 1, they're a submissive act and they essentially and subconsciously give the other person power overview. I've talked before about power dynamics in conversation, like a closed communication. And that's, you think of a status and harmony. So this conversation, is the person acting higher status or lower status? Are they acting on my team or against me? An apology is ultimately lower status on the same team, or submissive behavior. So even if you think it's about, recompense and all this stuff, it's not. It's not. It really is a submissive act. And if you really do feel apologetic, and that's not just you, I feel guilty about doing something I shouldn't have, and so I want to dump my feelings onto the other person, which is the other reason apologies are no good, then just fix the behavior. Say mistakes were made, don't make the mistake again. Or better yet, be aware of the consequences of your actions before you do things, so you're never put in a position to have to apologize. And if they feel bad because you made a conscious decision to something, then there's nothing to apologize for. I did what I did. I knew you wouldn't like it. I did it anyway because I decided it was the better thing to do. And then there's nowhere to go with that. She could be mad, but she knows she was considered. Next thing on this, and this is a mistake. If you get an email, speaking of things that every red pill guy gets, once you get your shit together, you will get at some point in your relationship gigantic emails, walls of text messaging, FaceTime, some long 50 Shades of Grey ranting gibberish mess from your woman. In this case, maybe not her sitting next to you in the bedroom sending it, but you are getting it. And the only advice I can give to you, and this is probably the most prescriptive advice you're ever going to get from this channel, never read any of it. Never read any of it. If it's important, it's face-to-face important. And if she asks, did you read it? You say, no, but I'm here. What's up? And they'll get mad. But it's like, dude, if I'm your boyfriend, if I'm your husband, if I'm whatever, it's like, just tell me face-to-face. I'm not going to read a giant email calling me an asshole. But, and now here's the final thing from my take on this before we get to the final part here. Since he did read the emails, we might as well break them down. So the first one is, this is all just processing. She has a feeling. She doesn't know what the feeling is. It's a little bit of anxiety, most likely. Anxiety, a little bit of butthurt, who knows? And she's trying to process it with words. If she's out with friends drinking, this is what they're talking about. So the first one's like, I just thought was working on this and not working their relationship. She's basically asking for like guidance, which there's a place for that. Then the second one was like, you're doing this wrong. You're an asshole. I need you to fix this. And now she's getting kind of irritated with it. But then she kind of thinks over all of them. And she's like, you know what? Never mind. Just read this email. And then she like accepts it. She realizes this anxiety she's feeling is actually desire, which is true. Desire comes at the tail end of anxiety. That's how it works for women. And that's why shitty, bratty behavior usually just comes before hard sex. It's just the way it works. When she realizes, I get it. I get you have to be a dick. And I get you have to do this. But can you just come meet me a little bit? And she's asking for comfort there. That was a comfort test. Now, in email, all of that nuance is gone. All of it. And you're going to miss it all. And you're going to screw it up. This is why you have to do it face to face, because her body language will say all that she needs. And in this case, what did her body language say? I have anxiety about where I am in your marriage, and the only agency I have is my sexuality. I am feeling anxious, and that kind of turns me on. So wake up and then go to town. That's a good thing. This is absolutely a good thing. So for the guy, all he has to do is really just understand these dynamics, because what happens here, generally speaking, when guys screw this up, is they're doing all these, red pill tips and tricks. They act like a bit more cold, a bit more aloof, a little less available unless they're getting value back. Nice guy stuff, assertive stuff. It's great. Their wife starts acting better and responding better to it, in the case in point. Then, and this is the screw up part, guys will think, well, I've fixed the marriage, so now I don't have to use these mean, evil, misogynist tips and tricks anymore, and I can go back to the way things are as a reward. And then they start acting like their regular unattractive selves that got them in that situation in the first place. The wife gets weird mixed signals. She stops becoming sexually available as she used to be. Oftentimes, she also gets a little irritated. Like, dude, imagine that. Your girl comes home. It's like, I just got my girls done, Now they're D cups. And you're like, it's great. And then the next day she comes home. It's like, you know what? You were so nice to me yesterday. I thought I could just reward you now and go back to my regular A's. And the guy, of course, what do you think the guy would react like? Probably pretty pissed. Unless you're into that. I don't know. Is there kind of ass implants you can get? So use that. Use whatever analogy you want. But that's the point. Is if she's responding well, then your behavior is the reward. And your goal is not to return to be yourself. It's to internalize this new sets of behavior, because you can only be you. You can be you and you can do things. You changing what you do doesn't change who you are. But when you're doing things that get you better results, don't stop doing them, and don't think you're doing anybody a favor. As a favor, I'm going to go back to the guy you didn't want to sleep with. Like, it sounds stupid when I put it that way, but a lot of guys believe that. And that's because they think they're women with an intrinsic value, and all they have to do is believe in themselves. It's like, no, man, you got to do stuff. It's just the way it is. Anyways, enough about my rambling. Jack 10 of Hearts has two possible scenarios for the future of this marriage. One, a healthy captain first officer, and your wife is very affectionate, appreciative, and respectful. Or two, you engage in a continuing series of escalating conflicts with your wife, run here to the boys every time so you can be told that, way to put that bitch in her place, man, and then end up talking to a lawyer when you come home to see divorce papers. Because if that second scenario sounds good to you, then I think you should absolutely keep doing what you're doing. But if you actually care to work on yourself, bring your marriage to a happier place, then you may want to read the wall of text he's about to write. Oops, where'd it go? So he's going to exert comments from the previous post and provide his thoughts. Not everything he's going to say is canonical red pill, but you can and should take internet strangers' words with a grain of salt, even if he wrote you 4,000 of them. So here it goes. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's the right one. I thought for a second there. So this is that same guy. You may have heard it from a different report where he's like, yeah, I think we'd both be happy if we split up. Check that. And he took his wife to a wedding and that, and she was mad that he was having fun and drinking with his friends. So you mentioned several times that you would be happy if you and her were divorced. So let me ask you this. Do you like your wife? Not love her, like her. Because when I ask guys this question, some of them respond with something like, yeah, well, I think I like her. She's kind of a bitch, not always with me, just sort of always negative, and she can be selfish, and they basically hamster it away. So these men do not like their wives. All the red pill shit in the world won't fix that. You'll always question why you're spending so much of your time with somebody you don't particularly like and respect, and why you're making sacrifices with that person, and you only get so much mileage of, well, she's a good mother and she's great for the kids. And he's like, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say you never came to any terms of acceptance on, in a previous post I talked to you guys about before, where his wife threatened to take the kids and move to a different state if he did something she didn't like. You've never come to accept that. This is why your own attempt to bring a red pill approach to your marriage is so confrontational. It's too easy for you to think, F it. If I'm going to be stuck in this career that pays well but I hate, I'm going to have a marriage 100% on my terms, no compromises, no half measures. My wife can either get on board or get the fuck out. It's a natural reaction, but that's not the underlying attitude that's going to lead to scenario 1. Your wife will probably be good at deferring when you come and say, 75% of the marriage, but she'll have opinions on the other 25%. And she'll want to feel like those opinions are not just dismissed, especially if it seems like those dismisses are happening on a whim with no overarching principle or discipline. And building a frame as a principled and disciplined leader, husband, father, it takes time. Time you haven't spent nearly enough investing yet. Don't let the blowjob distract you from this. It's just, actually, you know what? Let's take a step back. This one's on me here too. I've talked before on this. His marriage was a type 2 marriage, where it's the constantly complaining passenger. Nothing he does is ever good enough. He has to take responsibility for everything. Now, here's the thing. It doesn't mean that you don't get a good sex life. This blowjob and the fights and the emails he's getting was because, if you remember from the previous MidsWatch, and if you haven't, I would suggest you go back and watch it, that he put his foot down, he made her watch the kids, and then he went to enjoy a couple hours out of his day to be a professional photographer at a wedding and drink with some longtime friends. So out of this stuff, again, she still thinks he's incompetent. She still disrespects him, all that stuff. But that night, or I think this was like a week or two later, something like that. The timelines don't matter. That her hamster starts running. All of a sudden he's a new man. Well, what's he doing now? Is he sleeping with her? Blah, blah, blah. I get how he has to be like this. And then the sex comes. Now, here's the problem with this. It was a good thing there that he held his frame. But what's going to happen is it's going to be a cycle. She's going to berate him, and berate him. And he's going to finally one day in like a month say, I've had enough, blew his shit on her, or lose his shit on her. I'm a man, I'll do what I want. She gets put in her place, and then they have hot sex right after that. Now, I don't know about you, but while the alarm clock is great, he needs to learn that constantly letting her whittle him down to nothing in order for him to blow up and to set things back to even keel is not the best way to commit push and pull and to make a relationship work. Actually, there's a technique called manufactured outrage that I talk about that's kind of for these situations where she clearly needs a certain amount of emotional conflict to get through a day. And so instead of waiting for her to dictate the conflict with disrespect and that kind of stuff, and this is an advanced technique, you just kind of manufacture it. Once in a while, just call her a bitch. Every now and then, get mad over nothing, and then just drop it. And the idea is these little emotional highs and lows. It's like playing catch with your dog for 2 minutes. You don't have to walk him in the park every day. Just throw him a ball a few times and it'll be fine. But again, that's advanced. This guy's at the point now where he's trying to navigate the highs and lows, and Jack is trying to articulate to him the idea of having a consistent frame and competence and to not lose sight of that just because he's got a blowjob in the morning, Anyways, back to this. If you want your wife to submit on all terms to your marriage, then you have to become a man that has the value to be worth submitting on all the terms of your marriage. And that is not you still. He brings up some old points like, none of us are in shape. He started to walk, a little bit, and he's helping out. His son eats like a horse, a little chunky. So basically a fat family. And he's going to start joining a gym in August. He's going to get around to it. Sometimes maybe. I call these the New Year's resolutions, where everybody says all the things they have to do, get the dopamine hit from saying it, and then they never do things. And he's like, look, I have no idea why the guys here didn't pounce on you more for this. You announced this declarative decree that henceforth that the other married family guys shall consume no more fructose corn syrup. But, and I mean in this most constructive way possible, you're still a fucking undisciplined fat ass. Oh, you walk an hour a day. Good for you, man. You're going to join a gym in 2 fucking weeks? Are you kidding me? Are we really not getting the do you even lift bro message across here? Like, whenever you do this, you just come across like a hypocritical dictator. I urge you to apply any family-wide policies to yourself first. You want to improve your family's diet? Great. You first. Whip yourself into shape. Tell your wife to stop buying junk, but if she does buy it, don't yell at her. Just don't eat it. Once you get this discipline, you're going to have an immense amount of authority to handle this stuff effectively in the future. Your kids will be like, wow, Dad, how do I become strong like you? And you'll tell them, I don't eat crap like chips and sugary crap. And now you don't need to worry about the in-laws feeding your kids too much sugar because they're going to aspire to be as cool as Dad and not eat it either. So when you behave with the discipline and principles of a successful and high-value man, you'll find that people in your life will consciously or subconsciously just emulate you anyway. So when we say acta non verba, what do you think we mean? So here, going to move on to another aspect of your marriage that will continue to be the elephant in the room until you finally realize how you can solve it. And he brings up, and again, watch the other field report from the other MidsWatch if you want to know on this one. It was an emotional affair. He had a pen pal, and she threatened to divorce him. It was just some ridiculousness, but I know they treated it seriously, so here we are. So you started scrolling through Craigslist or Tinder or something, got you a titillating sense of excitement your wife never could, and now that you committed the ultimate sacrifice of giving up your low-paying but fulfilling career based on your wife's divorce ultimatum, if you had known the marriage meant sacrifice, you wouldn't have gotten married. So that's unfair, right? You got a raw deal. You didn't sign up for this shit. Which is why you hamstered being sexually explicit with another woman as being okay. Getting married means making some vows. But then you got all these extra conditions thrown in, so fuck that. If you got to meet those, then maybe you're not going to keep up with all the vows. It's just like, own your decisions, man. Decisions, consequences, got to go with it. I get it. Fair never really factored in, but it's all about what do you want. And this guy doesn't really know what he wants. He also mentioned in the previous one about counseling, right? Wanted to see a counselor, didn't help very much. And he's like, look, no shit. One sec. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no shit, it didn't work. You make a huge resentment or a huge sacrifice for a woman. She gets resentful. You want to cheat emotionally. You see a counselor. The counselor tells you you need to let go of your resentment. Tells the woman she needs to understand your transgressions and appreciate his sacrifices for the family and forgive him. But hey, the guy in the sweater vest got to charge you $200 an hour on something that you already knew. And neither of you now follow. And now you have some authority outside of the marriage telling you guys to be an authority. It just doesn't work. Anyways, I bet your wife says the word trust a lot. It probably drives you crazy. Every time she says the goddamn word, it's like trust. It's like giving you another lash on your back. Like, how many times did she get to whip you into shape about this? Is she even capable of this much hamstring? It's been years. Get over it. It's not wrong, per se, but I want to explain why this is another reason the whole unilateral dictator thing will lead to a lot more confrontation than it has to. When your wife talks about trust, she's not talking about fidelity anymore. She's scared of trusting you because she's scared of this. There are some actions my husband could take that he knows will hurt me very deeply. And even though he's fully aware of this, he's fully capable of taking those actions anyway. That's trust. The trust that she's not married to, essentially, a sociopath. Now, you're not a sociopath, but this trust isn't about fidelity, it's about empathy. Because every time she's upset, every time she feels dismissed, blah, 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 she feels like, as a resentful thing, he just says, fuck it, I don't care. And don't get me wrong. It's an annoying level of hamstring from a girl to deal with. I get it. And maybe you aren't full-blown, willing to blow a huge hole in your marriage vows and actually full-on properly cheat. But you did just play just put in the tip, see how it feels. And that's pretty much the same transgression to a lot of chicks. And I get it. It's unfair. But you didn't get to hold the trust thing over her head for a few years, right? So fuck that bitch. Is that what he's getting at? So back to these emails, the 3 emails. I didn't write all above just to enrage you again. I mean, I sort of did, because that's the only way your marriage survives, essentially, is if you process and accept that this is the hand you've been dealt and get past your anger. Anger will be part of that process. But you can't just use the red pill as a backdoor anger outlet. You can't think, well, you once said I had to do this or get the fuck out. So now I'm just going to say you have to do these things or you can get the fuck out. It's not just about a series of whatevers to get the fuck out. It'd be nice if there was some sort of natural laws or marriage emotional equilibrium that lets you do that, but there's not. There's just you being a controlling dick and your wife being resentful about it. You guys building up a huge amount of anxiety and then sexual release so you guys think it's a good thing and you continue on this dysfunctional path. So you might as well just skip to the end, and that's filing. I get it. It's a shitty hand, and you probably wouldn't get married now if you knew what you knew then, but you're here, so you either accept it and focus and play the cards you've been dealt, or you don't. So the problem was that, in your case, is that she fears that you'll go unilateral dictator on her because she doesn't trust you. Your wife is wary because she thinks you're basically going to make all these changes and you're not going to give a shit about what she thinks of them, and everything will end up back at, well, if you don't like it, then get the fuck out. And even worse for her, I can tell this is a woman that does not want to get divorced. She literally used the phrase dog backed into a corner in these emails. The idea of a divorce terrifies her. Some of it's selfish. You have a good job now. She probably has a nice lifestyle. And divorce would disrupt a lot of that. But She didn't divorce you either when you were earning no income as a loser or when you played the just the tip with your marital vows. A lot of women would have. Now, I'm not saying she gets extra points for that, but I'm illustrating this because proceeding with even the slightest sprinkles of empathy will go a huge way towards your approach. Which, by the way, when he's talking about empathy here, I don't want you to think communication or any of the other blue-pilled nonsense. What he's talking about here is passing comfort tests. This was like well before we had this stuff all well articulated, but that's it. Providing a little bit of comfort, along with his anxiety, the stuff that he's doing, maybe manufacturing these outrage events as opposed to like living off the seat of his pants, you'll end up still getting those alarm clock blowies in the morning. You'll get a lot less stupid emails and a lot less divorce threats and lack of trust. It essentially makes the good parts of the marriage more sustainable and the bad parts more manageable, to the point that you just have what they call in the business a functional relationship, you know? Okay. So he goes back to the old story about the packing for the kids. Yeah, he goes, you know what? Everybody's wife flips out like this every now and again. But the whole point of techniques like fogging is to de-escalate these situations in a way that projects empathy, but doesn't involve you actually explaining or apologizing. Which, if you guys want to know what book that is from No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover, and When I Say No, I Feel Guilty by Dr. Manuel Smith. Fundamental red pill reads. So I guarantee you, if you have this exchange a little bit better, provide some fogging, maybe a little bit of amuse mastery, your wife would probably pack the bags better from the last time. Because was your goal to win the who's better at packing things with your wife? Or is it to pack less stuff for an overnight trip? Is it to attach to the identity of I'm the good husband, you need to be the good wife? Or is it just to have a more functional event? So when he goes, and this is the best part here, so to the third email, the one about the read this first, your wife explicitly told you she wants you to lead. She basically just doesn't want you to be a controlling dick about it. In other words, tone. I don't mind you being a cold-hearted sociopath, but could you be a little nicer about it? A comfort test, right? How do you handle that? Same way you handle every comfort test. Provide a little bit of emotional security, a little bit of those beta behaviors, kisses on the forehead, snuggles in bed, all that stuff that like beta males do to think they can win over their wife. Or a better way to think about it is think about the way a father who loves his daughter. Like, how does he treat her? Hugs her, puts the finger paint on the fridge, kisses on the forehead, takes her for ice cream. That kind of relationship. And that kind of more paternal thing, which is the complete opposite of the sexual one. But if the sexual one is the only one there, if only those alpha behaviors are the ones there, you increase anxiety and create a very, very volatile life. And so the idea is you got to calibrate and provide both sets of behaviors as needed to ensure that A, you have an amazing sex life with your relationship, and B, you have a emotionally functional one that's not two neurotic assholes yelling at each other. And that's the trick. And it's not the same point for everybody. Some people can handle a lot more of one and a lot less of the other, and vice versa. So while no woman is exactly the same, they're all somewhere along the spectrum, and if you're a smart guy, you can figure it out. So to end it off here, Jack's like, I would just say it's unreasonable to not put any effort for any empathy and expect to remain married. So yeah, I know Jack likes to say this often where a lot of his stuff isn't canonical red pill advice, but it really is in a way. It's just the way he words it. I actually enjoy, he kind of words a lot of the red pilled stuff with blue pilled language to kind of bring the beta male over. It's like, come on over here, man. You can get these morning blowjobs. It's fine. Let me teach you how to pass a comfort test afterwards. Makes me laugh. We always had our disagreements, but at the end, I think the guy is slowly understanding through his mess of a marriage, you know? And it really is. These are one of the harder ones to deal with because most guys in the failing relationships is usually like sexual dysfunction is a big part of it. You know, cold dead marriages, cold dead relationships. And a lot of the part is them having to learn to build attraction again. But this guy, because of the emotional turmoil from a non-trusting wife, actually can create that with just the smallest bit of boundary enforcement. And it's very easy to see that as a success metric. Meanwhile, he's ignoring everything else that matters around him. And that's why it's difficult, because I got this, boys. I got this. I'm the fucking man. And then, holy gee, she's gotten worse. Oh, never mind. I solved it. I'm the man. Oh, it's even worse. And that's why he keeps coming back to the trough. Guys, what do I do? Nothing makes sense. This is actually, I would say, the most fun type of dysfunctional relationship to watch a guy work on, because it has the most red-pilled strategies compressed into a single relationship, but at the same time, it's the least fun one to be in because you're essentially having to learn how to be attractive, how to not be unattractive, how to be your own therapist, how to be your own workout coach, how to be a father figure to a wife, how to be a therapist to the girl, how to manage everything. And it's like, is the juice not worth the squeeze? Like, maybe, maybe not. You can leave her if you want to, but for the most part, nobody would be going through this unless they gave a shit about their wife. And so if you're going to do it properly. Because I guarantee you, once you understand this stuff, you are Chad incarnate. Even if your wife leaves you at the end, I guarantee you there's 500 girls under the age of 27 who think whoever trained you to be this top tier dude deserves mad respect. Now sit back. Let me blow you. No, I'm just kidding. Hope you enjoy yourselves. That was a bit of a lengthy one. It's kind of a two-parter. If I make the effort to remember, you'll see the 2 episodes back to back. But no promises. I tend to be pretty bad at this. But if you're a regular follower, you should be able to follow that one just fine. I'll catch you on the next episode, though. Cheers. Fuck, I can't believe I forgot that one was a 2-part. Yeah, that guy's marriage was a mess, but we learned so much from that one, you know? That's weird. Why am I... Is that the right one? Here, one sec. I see like an extra video here. Oh, that's a totally different episode of something. Okay, never mind. So that one's 64. Where am I leaving off? That one's 63. Which makes this one 62. No, this one's 63. What the hell is this one then? Oh, it's 63 part 2. Gotcha. Losing track of my own damn things. Okay, next is the minor nuke event. Stress, stop asking for sex, blah, blah, blah. I don't do that anymore. This Rockmore Oak. Oh, this one's a long one too. All right, whatever. Fuck it. Let's see how the chat's doing. How are you guys doing? Best time to start a gym at the random Tuesday in October. No fads to attach your ego to. That's not a bad idea. Sup, Ryan. 4-star general vibes today. Oh, thank God. The T-Rex army in the house. I gotta love it. Has there been a pack in a car and a story chip? Well, that's the same story. It's two stories back to back. I made a note to show that they were a 2-parter, but for some reason I neglected to mention that before I started. So we'll get there. It'll all be fixed up in the recordings, though. Let me see here. Use the alarm clock as a measure of success. I'm behind right now trying to catch up on the live stream. Oh, yeah, don't sweat it, man. It is one of those things, man. I don't know how to explain it. It's one of those things. It's at the point where guys realize that oral sex was like a litmus test. A litmus test for becoming more alpha in your relationship and taking more of a leadership role. Yeah, don't be that guy. Best advice I ever got. Sesame Street for alpha males. That's actually not a bad way of putting it. I can deal with that. I'll fix it in post. Yeah. But that's fine. We still got 1, 2, 3 more. See, son of a bitch. Oh, it feels good. Yeah, use our fight with Abu. I don't want to milk that one too much. It's just such... I don't know. I like milking I liked milking it for a little bit of story on framing that to help with the book, but I always start to think, like, how often do I go back to this trough for, like, look at this fight, look at this beta male, until it's be like, yeah, we already know. It's been like 3 weeks, man. Oh, Nico, divorce hearings, huh? Don't forget the Better Beta Divorce Guide, man. Hopefully you followed it. Hopefully you're playing nice. Hopefully you followed through the other 2 guys that came before you with their divorces. I don't want to name them in chat here, but yeah. God, dude went from die, you bad Muslim, to let's talk, dude. He just wants to be heard. He wants to be validated. To be fair, that Abu American thing is just the same as this fucking neurotic, anxious wife, right? Anyways, so I got a minor nuke event. Start today. Brainwash your children. Oh, yeah, it's some weird fight. So this one will be kind of good. All right, so I'm going to get to this one. You'll like it. It's a little snappier than the last one, actually. It's not as long as I thought. Being overreactive is childish, and being non-reactive is just as stupid. Also, don't have stupid fights with your wife over stuff you saw on TV. Welcome, MidsWatch. You guys are here. This one's a simple one. It's I'm sure everybody in a relationship has got it at one point where your wife watches something on TV or has a friend that has something happen. They have a discussion about the values of it. The guy says some real shit, and the girl has a reaction to it. And this is one of those examples. So guys, like, I didn't see it coming. I'm still a noob. I've seen some success. You know, I stopped asking for sex, stopped getting butthurt about rejection, at least not on the outside. And I refused to argue, been batting down shit test after shit test, positive reactions from the wife. I'm by no means in the clear. And I thought I knew there was going to be setbacks. So being quiet and just shutting up if I don't know what to say has been my best friend. Here's what happens. Came home from work. Things were great. She greeted me with a truck and a kiss, or in the truck with a kiss, asked me about my day, very interested in a few details I had closed, which would be financially beneficial to the family. I provide well financially and have for the last 3 years. She's pleasant to be around and watched my daughter and her friend play in the yard. And then she brought up some news story later that day about a woman who got put in jail because she brainwashed her children against the ex, to the point where they told the judge it would be like going to Guantanamo Bay to meet the ex for lunch. And they refused. The dad, right? The judge put the lady in jail over it. My only comment was, man, people need to grow up and not bring their kids into adult matters. She got quiet. I looked over and asked her what was bothering her, and he's like, first mistake. She told me that she has told our daughter a lot of things she doesn't like about me. My brain immediately thinks of all the times my daughter has told me she doesn't like me or doesn't love me, just out of the blue. Never bothered me besides resolving to spend more time with her to try and repair what was happening. And I replied, do you think that's a good idea? And she goes, no. All right. He's like, okay, just don't do that anymore. She's like, all right. That was it. I was mad, but I've been reading The Art of the Stoic, and I found some value for it in my personality that really needs a lot of improvement. We move on. She's quiet the rest of the day, and I just let it be. Today, she calls and starts laying out to me how I'm being controlling, and I'm an asshole, and she won't put it up and demands to know where I've been reading this stuff. I'm just telling her I'm making changes. I'm fixing myself. Don't worry about it. She demands to know more, and he's like, no. She continues to yell on the phone as he's holding himself together. She says she's taken our daughter to her parents, which I'm like, no. I've already kicked the mother out of the house. She's not supposed to see the kids. She's that bad. And like, end of story. I'm not going to discuss this anymore. She's like, you can't control me. You need to stop what you're doing right now. I want my husband back. He's like, no. I'm making changes, and I'm going to continue. Doesn't matter what happens. Well, what if that means I leave you and take your daughter? You're like, well, that would suck. It's not going to happen. But you're free to do whatever you like. And you won't get my daughter. She's like, what? You would leave me? I can't believe you would say that. She's like, I didn't want it to come to that, but I'm done with being unhappy. First off, I got to stop here. Don't ever do this on the phone. Again, if it's important, it's face-to-face important. Stop having fights over texts and emails and phone calls. Jesus. The guy had just finished telling you how if he didn't know how to deal with the situation, shut the fuck up was like his best strategy. And right here is exactly where he should have used it. Exactly. Anyways, we talked a few more minutes, how she needed to slow down, spend some time apart, doing other things. We're not separating, but she wants to take a step back. I'm like, yeah, do what you need to do. And she seems to be in shock about how casual he was about it. So my question is, how do I slow this down? It's moving fast, and I'm not equipped to handle it at its pace. Yeah. So one of those things, this is my thoughts before we get into it. Whenever you read a field report from a guy and he uses the words stoic, calmly, or butthurt, as in I'm not any of those things or I am stoic, you can already tell it's not going to happen. I guarantee you, you read through the field report, he will show examples of not doing any of them. Excuse me. It's an example of projection. The idea is he wants to feel these things, and so he has a perception problem where he can't actually see him not doing them, so he just projects that onto other people. Same as like that Simpsons episode where Homer was looking in the mirror and then all he saw was like pecs and he made him dance. Yeah. So Jack chimes in, and this is like an isolation thing, which is kind of good because Jack took a more, long-term approach, because this is one of those same guys, deleted his account, moved on, but he had like 5 or 6 posts beforehand, and these are all kind of like, he's going to give you like a broader view. But on this one, the big takeaways is, one, if it's important, Like, he's basically talking about divorce and parental alienation on the fucking phone. Like, don't. You sound bothered. Wait till I get home. We'll talk about it then. Okay? Yeah. And then you get there. That gives you A, a cooling off period where people aren't yelling at each other. And B, body language. It's amazing what can be changed when you just have a little bit of body language in a conversation. Secondly, when you guys get that random question out of nowhere, like I watched something on TV, or I had a dream, or I have a friend that does something, she's testing you. She's testing you to see how you react to something. Now, guaranteed on this one, she's been bad-mouthing dad to the kid for a long time, and she feels bad about it. So she tells him a story. Oh, I saw it on the news. This guy's mom treated the dad so badly that they put her in jail. What do you think of that? And the guy's like, that chick's an idiot. And she goes, I used to do that. And now that's where you kind of understand that when a girl brings up these random scenarios, they're basically asking if you're going to judge them for doing stuff. This is why sometimes girls have slutty thoughts. I don't know. You may have heard this before. They do. Like maybe they're interested in a threesome with you and some other girl. Maybe they want to wear lingerie and they've been kind of prudish most of your relationship. Maybe they want to try anal for the first time, but they're afraid of bringing it up. And so they'll always bring up stories, things they saw in the news, or their friend was doing this stuff, and to see how you react. And a lot of guys respond by acting all prudish. Oh, well, your friend Cynthia's a whore. And here's what the girl hears. If I try to be this sexually promiscuous with him, he's going to treat me like a slut, and so I better act more prudish. And so a lot of guys don't realize then what they're doing is they're sabotaging their own relationship by acting this way, by treating, it's a Madonna whore complex thing. But yeah, so the takeaway from this is whenever you have these random hypothetical conversations, realize the girl is just adding a degree of separation from her bad behavior to see your reaction. And I would only suggest there, don't be outwardly judgmental, because the instant you are, they will clam right up. What you want now is honesty and forthright communication. And the only way that happens is if she feels safe. And the only way she feels safe is if you quietly judge and not outwardly judge. Now, depending on what information you get from that, you can do whatever you like, but just don't act like a chode. Anyways, back to this one. So Jack's like, most of the guys are going to talk about this in isolation and congratulate you on outcome independence in the face of your wife's threats. I was going to do the same, but then I read through some of your older stuff and some observations I have stand out. So he's asking about, how do I slow this down? He's like, so why do you want to slow this down, champ? I checked a week ago and you were bragging about shut the fuck up and watch your hamster do burnouts. It kicks in so fast. Isn't that what you wanted? You were puffing your chest, the mighty alpha, snickering as her hamster runs off ragged, rubbing your wife's complete lack of options in her face, and then running here to brag about it? You're a tough guy a week ago. What changed? When I read your previous post, I rolled my eyes and thought, yep, another 2-week warrior, and he's going to be here in a week asking, I just got a nuclear shit test. Am I doing something wrong? But everybody was too busy high-fiving you in the comments, just like they're mostly doing here. So yeah, you need to be less rock and more oak. And I'll get into what that means in a sec. Your last post made a comment about her hamster needing a hip replacement. Well, yeah, that's better than let the hamster steamroll you. But you're not making the hamster work for you. You're just sitting in the other room watching it run out of control and wondering why your wife is so distressed. So the 3 things here: rocks, oaks, and hamsters. Hamster is just a euphemism for a girl's emotions, how they kind of just run out of control, like spiraling. You ever say that? Hey, lady, you're spiraling. That's what the hamster is. It's like a hamster. Keeps running in the wheel, keeps going faster, but it's not going anywhere. The oak is the idea of managing to be adequately reactive. Think of like an oak tree. The wind blows through, a hurricane blows through it. Yeah, the leaves brush, so it acknowledges the wind is there, and that's like a metaphor for empathy. But it doesn't uproot, it doesn't change, it doesn't move, and that's frame. A rock, on the other hand, just non-reactive. And this is where you get that lack of empathy, the lack of dealing with comfort tests, the lack of dealing with shit tests. You're basically just sitting there taking punches and being non-reactive to it. That's not frame. That's just being autistic. And that's the idea, is this guy keeps just like not reacting to anything. And so she keeps escalating to more and more extreme statements and behaviors. And even though he's freaking out on the inside, he's not giving any indication that any of this is sinking in. And that's why it's escalating. So just a little bit of oak and a little less rock. And you can find that these fights that constantly get worse and worse and worse just won't. Because most of the time, she's not trying to be a bitch. She's trying to get a reaction. And if you can give a reaction in a measured way based on behavior that you would prefer to see versus stuff you wouldn't prefer to see, then you're not going to get these child abandonment threats, you know? Anyways, your wife seems like an anxious person. Anxious people often communicate their anxiety through anger, and that's why it's not enough to be the rock. A rock can withstand the anger, but she's still left with the anxiety. You'll have a much less confrontational marriage if you respond in a way that does not just deflect her anger, but also deflects the anxiety. Quick example. You manage taking over the finances. A rock move is saying, okay, woman, I make the money. I'm going to handle the bills. Don't worry your pretty little head about that anymore. An oak move is like, all right, it's time to get serious about our finances. I've put together the financial plan for short, medium, long term. This is the money we need to save for a house, for whatever. This is how much left over for, spending. I'm going to take my paycheck, set up some plan where the money's allocated per plan, and you're only going to have access to the discretionary income. So you put in the work for a plan that included your family, included her, and you're taking the lead on executing it. Takes a lot less hamster with that approach, which makes things easier. Winning shit tests as a rock could sometimes leave your wife with lingering resentment. Let's say you feel you deserve a raise at work. You storm in the boss's office, tell him about how undercompensated you are, you're pissed, and you're going to quit if you don't get a raise. But realistically, you can't quit. You need the income from the job. In one scenario, your boss says, well, if you quit, I can't control that. I don't want you to quit, but if you do, send me your letter of resignation by the end of today. Now, your only move, knowing you can't actually quit because you need the paycheck, is to sheepishly exit his office and go back to work. You can't quit. You have to keep working. But you're going to have some lingering resentment. You definitely won't be motivated to be a hard worker and feel appreciated by your boss or the company. In the other scenario, your boss says, do you want to quit? Of course not. We hired you for a reason. We don't want you to quit, and I don't think you want to quit either. But you're asking me for a raise I can't give you. So if you do insist on quitting, I can't do much about that. Now, scenario 2 is going to leave you feeling better about things. But in both, the boss didn't give you a raise. But in scenario 2, you go back to work, you're probably happier. You could still quit, but would you really want, but you actually want to keep working. So he gets back to their conversation and how they're having too much of it. And he's like, don't kid yourself. Your wife, perhaps more than most of our wives here, is giving you shit tests that are very easy for you to win. And that's why she's calling you controlling. You're probably not being controlling. She just doesn't really have any winning moves she can play. And any response on your end that isn't sheer capitulation, she just has to live with it. You're not being controlling, but she has no control. So when she says you can't control me, what she's really saying is you need to stop rubbing my nose in the fact that I have no control. And that's your problem as a rock. You just kind of keep rubbing her face in it over and over and over again, like it's a revenge fantasy. Cliched as it sounds, she is, figuratively speaking, stuck between a rock and a hard place. That means she'll never come to the conclusion that she could be sweet or she could be a bitch. I like my husband the way he responds when I'm sweet, and my family functions better, so I could do that, but I'd rather be sweet. Instead, she just keeps coming to the conclusion that I could be sweet or a bitch, although if I'm a bitch, then my husband just reacts like an even bigger asshole. So I can't be a bitch, I guess I'll have to be sweet. Can't have versus could and want. Do you see this? Parallels with the raise example. So when you're like, yeah, the wife asked you what books you were reading and you said, I'm making changes to improve myself and that's going to continue no matter what. Compare that versus, I want more out of my life and you and our daughter are part of that life. I want to be 95 years old, host me a Christmas Eve party with our great grandchildren. And we can't do that if you're not making the right choices with our health and money. Now, if that's controlling, then maybe we do have different ideas about what we want in our future, and I can't do anything about that. She'd probably say something like, oh, I'd want those things too. I just don't understand why you have to be so mean about it. Well, those things take work. They take discipline. So yeah, discipline isn't always rainbows and sunshine. I want you to trust me. I want you to follow me. Maybe I haven't been clear about this, and that's why I seem mean, but I can't stop you if you don't want to follow my lead. By the way, if you want to immediately reconcile with your wife today, go see her and say this stuff. I would pretty much guarantee she'll melt in your arms and have some awesome makeup sex. Which is true. Sometimes just like a little bit of a good delivery, a little bit of silver tongue makes all the difference. And he's like, yeah, so time to oak up, man. Your overall problem is you're viewing shit tests as you just beating her. Shut the fuck up works, but you don't need to do it every time. Your value should be such that you can just spare a little bit of empathy, a little bit of comfort now and again. Give you another example. And he was talking about an older post of his. Well, it was sex time this evening, and she suddenly goes dark on me and says she can't get that blonde off her mind. I tell her, whatever, that blonde is envying you right now because you get to have me tonight. She says she's gone to bed, and I tell her she's being childish, and that other blonde chick is keeping her from taking care of her husband. She's gone. In other words, they saw some girl who showed some interest in him, and he played it off, and he tried to be cocky and funny about it. It's like, you could say something like, does that blonde know how to fix my favorite cocktail? Or something else sweet that your wife actually does do and you genuinely appreciate. Again, the key word is the comparison that your wife does things you consider more special than just a set of tits. And that will earn, anything else will earn you more contempt. But by tying her attraction to her behavior as a positive reinforcement you can do here, you can turn some shit tests into a response that will cause your wife to think and act sweet by getting comfort. You're not watching the hamster and laughing. You're making it work for you. So some final thoughts on this. Yeah, the concepts he's talking about here, like obviously passing some comfort test is good. The difference between being an oak and being stoic or non-reactive. But handling, it's a simple concept. We call it rewarding good behavior, not rewarding bad behavior. And in this case, he's not very good at it because he doesn't know what good behavior is. And she may not know what good behavior is. So a lot of the times you kind of have to lead them on with the story. And in this case, it was some girl that was showing interest in him and she was jealous. It's like, oh, so what do you deal with that blonde? He goes, dude, the blonde doesn't know how to make a good martini like you. I'll use personal example in mind. My girls always ask me, he's like, why do you love me? I'm like, it's because you can drywall. And she always thinks it's funny. And you guys think it's funny. It's like, oh, it's hilarious. Girl doing macho work. And I'm like, no, it just means like other girls are there and other girls are attractive and other girls may be younger or richer or whatever, but it's like you do things that people just don't do. You do things that I appreciate that no girl would even think to do. And when you say little things like that, it lets them know that it's not just show up, bring beer, be hot. There's behaviors, and girls eat that shit up. They love it. They love the idea that there's something about them that's special. And if it can be tied to the way they act, then yeah, they're going to be encouraged to act that more way. Wow, he acts sweet. He acts comforting. He has more great behaviors when I act sweet and when I act submissive. So as I act more submissive, he acts better towards me. So I act more submissive, so he acts better towards me. And you see how the feedback loop is going here? None of this works, by the way, if you don't have the adequate amount of attraction or like alpha behaviors in there. Like if she doesn't find you sexually attractive, if you're not building up any anxiety, then none of this stuff matters. This is how dead bedrooms happen, where they forget about the attraction part first. But, and again, this is a more advanced topic, so if your first week in, it's not going to help you much. But if you're one of those guys that you got good push-pull, you got good game, you're attractive, you got, all the things you need for a healthy sex life, but your problem is dealing with fighting and argumentative stuff and trust issues and that, these little bits of beta and these little bits of comfort go a long way into making that stuff more sustainable, so you don't have to have massive blowout fights once a week and then have crazy makeup sex the next day and then 2 more weeks of massive horrible fights in order to have makeup sex again a week later. There's a much more sustainable way to make this stuff. And ideally, you can get a guy like this there fairly quickly. And I don't know where you are in your relationships. Do you have one? Do you want one? Are you in one? Are you fixing it? Whatever. But like, you can do this. I believe in you. Anyways, have fun with that, guys. All right, so minor nuke event. Where did I leave off? I think that's 63. Was it 63 or 62? No, I think it's 60. Oh, 62. Hold up a sec, guys. Oh, that one's 62. So this one must be 61. Less rock, more oak. Yeah, that's the one. All right, I got it. 8 times the charm. Hey! How's chat doing? We're down to the last one, so we got a little more chit-chat, and then we can finish it off. Not gonna lie, I kind of enjoy these a little bit more than writing, because writing, I was starting to kill myself out this time. I'm like, I can't do it. Let me see. What do we leave off with? Long ball or chest, setting themselves to be hated by their kids later in life. Yeah, there's all kinds of consequences to it, and we can go into that and navel gaze about it. But I try to focus on like what you need to do. And that's the problem I have with these two, is because most guys are still in the anger phase. Most guys are unattractive, and so I don't get to talk about this stuff. Like I never have a guest on the podcast where I can bring up these things, or a Rule Zero panel where I can talk about this stuff. I can't even talk with Rolo about it because this is literally guys who've been in the trenches for a long time, and then they've gotten past all of the be your best self, all the catchphrases you guys know about being top tier and alpha males and stuff. This is after that. Now that you have these top tier man skills, what do you do to sustain a relationship? And so I guess I kind of like it where it's just, me and the camera with all these like random text names here. Oh yeah, Cocker, she's always testing. Girls are always testing because they're always neurotic. They're never sure where they are in your life. And so if they're not testing you, it means they're not invested. So yeah, guys who made it leave like Carl. Yeah, that's the problem, really. To be honest, like Misha's gotten it. Misha's switched on as anybody. We have conversations like this all the time. A bunch of the other guys here, they're super successful. He's just the most vocal one we have on it now. Do I want to do number 60? Is this one short? I tell you what, if it's a short one, actually, yeah, I think we can handle this one easy. It's a follow-up to Oak Rock one, too, so it'll be good. These are almost like they're flowing into each other. Yeah. Well, Valerie, that's the thing, too. It's not like all these concepts are in the sidebar. Once you guys have gotten through, like I said, Smith and all that stuff, they're all there. All these are like practical examples of in places. Kind of like, you ever taken, I don't know if you ever know about it, but taking the bar is a lot of times like you'll study law, you'll study this, then you'll take the bar exam, and the bar will have specific legal scenarios, and you got to apply the law as you understand it into those scenarios. This is like the equivalent of a bar exam, but for red pill guys. That's why I often say, like, if I could fashion the red pill into any type of space I want, it wouldn't be ass models of Instagram talking about alpha males and smoking cigars. It would literally be like lawyers, boring lawyers on C-SPAN interviews talking about the nuances of law. I love it. It's boring, it's effective, and it's just so, like, you can't have an ego because like nobody's gonna be there to be more attractive, but it fucking works, and I love it. Anyways, but it's good though. So right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of these in the can. Or is that 10? Oh yeah, 9 in the can. So I'm gonna have 10 done by this, and I kind of want to get them all recorded out of the way so I can just like edit them, steamroll some editing, get them all out there, and then a month from now you're gonna recognize one of these ones from before, and it'll be fun. You guys know what the lead attorney does? Well, I mean, I guess so. Oh, are they? I didn't know that. These vids are actually kind of like similar to the study materials for the bar exam. Well, thank you about your ass, Marty. Anyways, the next one is just a quick unplugging post. You'll like it. About breaking your wife down and building her back up. I'll get started on it. Congratulations, Mr. Red-Pilled Man. You broke your wife down. It's okay. She needed it. Have a plan for what comes next. MidsWatch, guys, welcome. I'm going to do a follow-up. One of the last episodes I had on the MidsWatch was about a guy who was understanding the idea of the wife's bad behavior, breaking her down, building her back up, but he didn't know how to build the back up and reward for good behavior, or to encourage the kind of behavior that made everybody in the family happy. And this is another great example about that. It's a guy early on in his thing too. Again, 7 years ago, the most prolific red pill poster ever, Mr. Deleted. Typical though, 2-week warriors. One thing I do like about the 2-week warriors is they are such great cautionary examples, man. They really are. Anyways, so you've been helping one of the guys with an oak versus rock situation, which was the last one we had talked about. And I had one come up last night, although I thought I handled it okay. Her reaction said otherwise. Backdrop, she's from a family. Stepdad is fairly beta male, but somehow comes across as the oak a lot. Mom is irrational at best. Me and my wife had a main event, I think, where she told me that whatever journey it was going on to help myself was hurting her and our marriage. She asked about the gym, starting to wear a shirt and tie to work, the getting involved with some extracurriculars. This is like a month ago. And then at one point we had a fight where she was talking to me, saying if I don't go to the sweet boy, back to the sweet boy she met and fell in love with, she would leave, even though, the love she felt for me was gone. And I lost my shit inside. I told her I had allowed that boy to wither away because I was too busy doing shit that I thought would make you happy. And now I'm doing things for me. Ultimately, it's going to make this thing work anyway. So fast forward a month, following my male action plan, she's been doing a lot of things I expect a stay-home wife to do. When she forgets to do something, she sees me do it or whatever, she apologizes. And it's like, honestly, for things that aren't a big deal. So whatever. Last night, I answered her in a shitty tone about 2 contradicting requests. Stupid of me, I get it. And I didn't catch it fast enough. This started crying. In the last month, she realized my love wasn't unconditional. And yes, in fact, if I'm not happy, I will leave. She says she's been walking on eggshells, trying to make me happy, etc. So conversation after I give her a hug and a kiss, and then deeply say, look, she's like, look, I need you. You complete me. You're my soulmate. He goes, look, I love you too, madam. I chose you. I'm keeping you. And hers like, but you don't need me? He goes, I don't need you. I want you. And then there's some more crying and more hysterics about what I did say I needed her for in the past. And she can't handle the new him. He's too cold, doesn't love her enough. She knows about that she's been a shit, but he needs to give her a break. And the night shift ended on a pleasant note, though. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions in advance? I just remembered what this one was. So I know whose report this is. I know what happened to him. I know why his thing was deleted. And I know how this ended up. The guy's name was S-Curve Much. He's actually around the same time as me. Went through the exact same things. They broke up. They did break up. It was pretty, but that's not, it's not because of this. What it really was is she truly just didn't want to do what she had to do to get in there. And he moved on. He was a doctor out of New York State. I don't want to say exactly where, but he ended up, and he's like a short guy. He was like 5'4" or something like that. He ended up younger, tighter, like life got a lot better for him. But the point of this isn't that. The point of this is to let you know, like, first off, there's no guarantees. You can work on this stuff. You can become a better oak. You can be better with attractant behaviors. You can be better with comfort behaviors. You can become the best husband there is out there. You can do all the things you're supposed to do right. It's no guarantee you're going to win your wife back. It's no guarantee she's going to want to win you back. It's no guarantee that once you're there, you're even going to want her to come with you. I don't want to go into too many details about why they split up, but it's nothing to do with this anyway. So that anxiety she's feeling here is something called the main event. Now, a main event is a specific process in the male action plan where a guy starts to build his own attractive behaviors. He starts to become, do extracurriculars, gets more female attention, works out at the gym, better. All this stuff is better. And the girl doesn't know where she fits in her life, in that life anymore. And because she's not being good, she's not getting any comfort from him. And so it builds up a pool of anxiety. And it eventually blows up into like sobbing and snot bubbles and all this stuff. It's essentially a direct last minute Hail Mary approach to like, I don't know how to keep you in my life. How do I get comfort from you? To which point you provide something that's called a come to Jesus speech. And a come to Jesus speech is your way of letting her know, what do you have to do to keep in my life? And more often than not, it's a very simple speech. You just you lay out your vision. And if you are seeing this after the fact, I've got a book somewhere in the description on frame, which is based on like this concept here. This is technically part of Dread, but it's not the point. The point is to have not only a vision of where you see yourself in the future, but to be able to articulate it. And the idea is you're bringing the other person into your part of life. And that's where the trust thing comes in. And this is like, for the most part, he passed it. Just letting her know, love's not unconditional, whatever. Where was the other part I wanted to hit on here? Oh, yeah, I didn't catch it fast enough. So this is something else. This is something for more, I'd say, beginner guys. It's good to know. So when you first start learning red pill stuff, you start learning about frame, about comfort tests, about shit tests, about dread, about all this stuff. You're going to go through a learning process through a cycle, which I call an OODA loop. That's observe, orient, decide, act. It's a concept I've stolen from Venkatesh Rao, who stole it from the American Air Force. The idea is you run through this cycle more quickly to maintain superiority in your decision-making process. So the first time you get a shit test or a fitness test or anything, and you don't know what it is. So you're messing up and you don't know why you're messing up. And so you're like, I don't know what's happening. Why is this thing such a shit show? And then you learn about the concept and you screw up again. But once you screw up, after you've had some time to reflect on it, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I know why I screwed up. How do I not screw up in the future? Then the next time they run into the same situation, they screw it up, but before they finish, they stop themselves and stop screwing up. Basically, they're cutting off the bleeding. All right. You're in the middle of opening your mouth saying something stupid. You're just like, you know what? Never mind. Move on to your thing. That's a third step. Fourth step is you're about to open your stupid mouth and say something stupid and screw up your situation, and you stop yourself before you make the mistake. Then the last step is where you no longer need to be cognizant of it. It just becomes natural, where you just don't screw up. And it's a process. It's a long process, but once you get there, you get there. Obviously, he was in the middle, where he knew he was going to screw up and he stopped himself before it got bad. So it's good steps, but it gets there. So to Jack's thing later on here. Let's get up proper. There are countless moves where the protagonist's main character has some dick or bitch boss who is insanely exacting expectations. But it's not the expectations that are so frustrating, it's the inconsistency. The main character bends over backwards to make everything perfect. The boss still rolls in and finds some deficiency that's fallen short of perfection. It's frustrating for the protagonist, and usually the movie involves them breaking down at some point and crying, "What do you want from me?" Sound familiar? By the way, this is actually before we articulated and understood the concept of the main event, so it's neat to see it in like a primordial form. Like, he's like, this is actually amusing to me. I'm sure you got a lot of satisfaction out of your little monologue there. Well, you want that sweet boy? Well, he's dead. You killed him. You told him what you want to do, and he did it, and you still shat on him. So now there's just me. How do you like them apples? And I'm sure you watched her devastation before your eyes, and although you didn't really like to admit it, probably felt good. But now you have a devastated wife. You broke her, and maybe swallowing the red pill was always going to involve a shit test, or you responded by breaking her to some extent. But now she's coming to you crying because she has no idea how to put herself together the way you want. So what's the next move? You might have wanted to think about that before you lost your shit internally. Although, to be honest, I don't blame you. Married Red Pill has basically zero prescriptive advice when it comes to this scenario. Some guys don't really have to break their wives, just captain up. Other guys do break them, but their wives are emotionally intelligent enough to figure out how to put the pieces back together. And this is why I keep seeing so many guys come here with posts like, this, and half the comments are basically, yeah, fuck that bitch. Just proves it's working. Keep doing what you're doing, and I just roll my eyes every time. Now, charitably, I think they say this because their wives are capable of putting themselves back together in the way yours isn't, so they don't have that perspective. Uncharitably, I think it's some dudes are still stuck in the anger phrase who would love to have their own "that sweet boy is dead" moment. But whatever. If I really wanted to write some generalized theory on the idea of breaking your wife down and putting her back together, I'd close this box and go write that, but we don't have enough scholars among us who can decide whether the theory has any merit. So let's get back to your situation. By the way, we do have enough scholars to come to this conclusion. And yes, the idea is the main event. The main event doesn't always happen, but when it does happen, there's always snot bubbles attached. And the come to Jesus event's the hardest thing. I've only ever seen one guy fail it. And unfortunately, when that happens, it's very hard. Trust tends to dissipate. It's kind of like the go or no go situation. But back to this. We say acta non verba all the time. But I think there's a decent chance that some of our wives let their hamsters run so wild they get lost in the maze. That's your wife. You've made it clear, to the point of being stupidly explicit, that you don't need her, but you do want her. What you've failed to do is communicate the answer to this question. What can she do to ensure you'll always want her? And it's difficult to communicate this with actions and not words. At some point, a lot of us are going to get what's called a shitty comfort test. Kind of like you did here. A hysterical wife who just wants to see her husband putting emotional distance between them and only seems eager to put more and more distance. So in her mind, where does that end? Until you're just friendly co-parents? Until you're just strangers sharing a mortgage? Until she gets the divorce papers? It's not exactly irrational for some women to have a freak out moment and wonder where the end game is. And he's like, as far as like the crying and the hysterics, I found those things are easily mitigated with the right words. And I'm going to give you some examples. That sweet boy didn't go anywhere. But you think that sweet girl really wants a sweet man? Because when the sweet boy only does things he's told to or is nagged about it, well, it's not really helping him become any kind of man. And he can't become a sweet man before he becomes a man, so that's what he's working on. Which, it's wordy, whatever. And he has a bunch of examples, which is just different ways of wording it. And again, Jack's always had a bit of his blue pill thing. But yeah, I get what he's trying to do. So when you used to learn, if you guys were ever learned like pickup artistry, a lot of it was the story. When you're telling a story to a person, you want to pepper in like displays of higher value, something that even though maybe the story is you getting beat up outside a bus station or something, you always have to add like certain tidbits into the story that show you have your shit together. Like, yeah, I was walking to this thing and the stripper I was dating at the time fell over, broke her heel. I had to go and find a shoe place like 3 a.m. Like, it's almost like an offhand thing that you were dating a stripper, but you're like, oh, what the hell? The guy was dating a stripper? And it's such like a nonplussed part of the story. What the hell? So Jack is suggesting this for talking with your wife, except for displays of comfort. Things that you want from a happy-go-lucky wife, things you can do to make yourself happy and loyal, which it's interesting, and it should, and most guys kind of intuitively caught on to that. So when you want to hear it explained to you, and that's what these things are. This is what passing comfort tests generally can look like once you get to the point that you can stop shutting the fuck up and start talking. Especially a main event. It's called the mother of all comfort tests for a reason. Anyways, I'm sure some guys read my examples and think they sound too beta male. Well, that's kind of the goddamn point. This is, again, a shitty comfort test. There needs to be comfort. She's freaking out because your actions have no context that she can figure out. So all you have to go and do is give your actions a context that's consistent, that she understands, and that she can operate under. You notice you could substitute the word frame for context in the previous sentence. That's intentional. To phrase it another way, you're generating a lot more dread than you realize, but that dread is unfocused. She literally told you, according to your post, that she knows she's been a shit, she knows she needs to stop, but she has no idea where to start. And I think it's time to oak up and give her some reasons. So to end on this one, just realize, and it's not a common issue, but it does happen. A lot of guys have pent up like revenge fantasies, and so when their wife gets freaked out and starts deferring to them, they're so focused on how they feel, which in this case is vindicated, and they're so excited they get to teach their bitch wife a lesson that they forget what it is that the whole reason they came here, because they wanted a happy life, a happy relationship, a happy sex life, all those things. Now, part of growing up and becoming red-pilled is understanding that you need, like, if you want to be happy, you sometimes have to give up on these emotional needs for revenge and validation and just accept that what happened in the past is in the past. And if you're getting what you want now, just be happy with it and move forward with that. Don't worry about some scoreboard where you got to teach that bitch a lesson, or where you have to make her feel as bad as you do, or in some god-awful examples where you went from a dead bedroom to a good bedroom. And you're like, now I'm going to shoot the wife down and tell her no for sex. That'll teach her. Because all of this stuff is just self-destructive. You know, it's like the saying goes, if you're going to get revenge, don't forget to dig 2 graves. Now, yeah, most arguments you're going to get on this is people saying, well, that's not fair. Well, like, who cares about fair? Are you happy? Good enough. I'm willing to give up fairness if it means it's happy. Especially if I get to be in charge. Anyways, that's it for this one. I'll catch you guys later. Enjoy yourselves. Cheers. All right. That's it. I'm done. Screw this red pill stuff. I'm going to go talk about my fucking feelings. Literally lol. Hey, Torsh. Look at you already getting some people in a fucking tiff for having a wrench. All right, younger, tighter, more agile, bitch boss or boss bitch. I like that. I was going to super chat, but I forgot my Google password. Is the main event followed by multiple alarm clocks? What the hell? Oh. Usually you get like a really good dynamic at the start. Like, honestly, it's the push-pull dynamic. Remember when I was talking before about anxiety, and then you stave off the anxiety and then hot sex afterwards, like the type 2 captains? The main event is essentially that same cycle, but it's like amplified to the point of complete irrationality. You know what I mean? So in the same way that you saw the buddy before with the wife packing the bag and shit, and they had a big fight and he drank the moonshine and then he got bloated in the morning, a main event gets those same scenarios. Just the idea is like the main event is like the one that counts. Normally these are all just like, they're just shit tests. You deal with them, you swat them down, they're comfort tests, you throw them in, whatever. The idea is to treat them properly, but kind of flippantly. The main event's not so much one of those things because it coincides with a permanent shift in the dynamic. Like, you know how I've talked before about the harmony and status chart? That's where ultimately somebody who considers themselves above you in status and either for or against you finally puts themselves into the quadrant of being on your team and lower status than you. So submissive. But to get there from another quadrant can sometimes involve a lot of crying. And so you have to be really good at it. Hey, speaking of which too, Zach, my girl made churros yesterday. It was pretty good. So how funny was that? I had a good chuckle out of that one, but then I ate 3. They're not bad. We didn't make any dulce, or what was that? Dulce leche? That milk cream stuff that goes with them. So it was just kind of just plain with the cinnamon. Anyways. Oh, the scoreboard is alarm clocks. Yeah, no, the scoreboard. And here, for the scoreboard, it's just a 3-pronged approach. It's your wife's putting points up that everything she does is right and nothing you do is right. And you're like, oh, fuck, I keep losing. And then the next step is, yeah, I'm teaching that bitch a lesson. I'm dropping points on the scoreboard. And then third step is where you realize, like, this is stupid. Why am I competing with this 120-pound little whammon? Yes, thank you. Cafe con leche. Well, it's not a coffee. It's just like the thing. And then you realize you just throw away the scoreboard. Stop keeping track. Stop playing, keeping count, being, disruptive. Thank you. Dulce de leche. Oh boy, Edward. Take a minute, man. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys. It's close to the end of the day. I don't think I have anything else planned for the week other than streams on Digital Rian Wednesday and then with the T-Rex Army for the zombies on Friday. I think I am done with guests too, so it's going to be some solo Red Mornings, I think, until the end of the year, unless I think of somebody else. Let me see if I have a... I don't think I do, though. I should probably check first, because if I do, I need to reach out to them and let them know I'm still good. Oops. Was it guests? Maybe I don't have any more. Well, that's actually all right then. Okay, it looks like I might not have any more. Fair. Why not Torsha? What's that? What about Torsh? She's already a mod. But anyways, I don't have anyone's planned right now, as far as I can tell. It'll be good. I haven't talked to Rolo in a while. I kind of want to get him back on the show a little more regular. Yeah. Get Abu American on during Christmas. Oh, dude. Mish, you're almost as bad as the guys this morning suggesting I get George Bruno on the show. I'm like, I'd love to have Georgie on there, but I don't think if Georgie's smart, he wouldn't say yes at all. Fucking guys. Oh, yeah, Ken. Yeah, and I know it's... See, that's the one thing that's always worried me about MidsWatch is because there's 60 episodes of these things. I think I'm on 61 right now, and I got another 10 in the can, so a lot of these concepts, they're very easy. But if you just start watching at episode 65, you're probably going to miss the first 50 episodes where this stuff all kind of gets explained, right? So, but we'll get you there. We'll get you there. Like I said, this isn't about alpha males and cigars and G's and real G's and shit. It really is about teaching some skills. And so you really are going to have to invest. I just wish I could say more. Luckily though, I did say the book on Frame coming out pretty soon. It's going to articulate this stuff so much more succinctly and so much easier. The only thing that sucks is that it's such a dense analytical book that Nick has taken his sweet... He's already 2 weeks late on the editing. So I'm hopefully going to get it in the next couple days. And then I can add... I have to make a round of changes. I guess there's stuff that he said it wasn't clear and I need to expand upon. Depending on how much the changes are, I could have that done in a week. It might take 2. And then I got to start formatting it for the book. And then we got to get it out. So... I was thinking Christmas, but I'm starting to think that might be a little bit generous a timeline, so we're going to say New Year's. But it'll be good. At the end of this, all of this language, all these concepts will be as actionable and crystal clear as possible. Am I paying him in bourbon? I'm going to pay him with a swift kick in the ass if I don't get it back soon. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoy yourselves. I'm going to let you go. Is there anything else I missed? Anybody do super chats or anything? I don't want to be that dick like Clary that keeps ignoring them. Okay, good. We're good. Anyways, cheers, boys. Enjoy yourselves.